Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting. We are starting now at 5:33. If you would like to give public comment on today's agenda, please fill out the public comment form up front. We should still have some up there. They're little purple sheets up on the table, and you can return them to either Mackenzie, our intern, or myself. My name is Jennifer. Thank you. And Madam Chair, it is 5:34. If you're ready to call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm calling this meeting to order. Would you do the roll call, please? Make sure we have the room.
And can we confirm they can hear her online also?
Tyler, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Do you hear Donna?
Yes, I can hear Donna.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Madam. I will call quorum. Donna Keats. David Titzel.
Present.
Cal Taylor, not present at this time. Stacy Shin, not present at this time. Audrey Keller. Present. Patrick Fisher.
Here.
Roman Schomburg, not present at this time. Stan Dowdy. Here. Thank you. And Mimi Luigi Strickler, not present at this time. Madam Chair, you have a quorum of the Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We're moving to item A2, public comment.
Donna, if I may go out of order for just a moment, I wanted to introduce our incoming NAB members. And I just want to introduce them. Then when I come to my update, I'm going to have them do a more detailed introduction. Okay, so our new members, we have Sean McCoy. Sean, you raise your hand. Their official start date, turns out, is May 1st. So
March 1st.
I'm sorry, March 1st. And so we have them sitting in today to learn the ropes. We also have Tristan. Here she is. Here he is. We'll have you introduced in a few moments. And then we have Mike Ginsberg, and he is one of our 2 alternates. And we have Mike Michelle, and he's another one of our 2 alternates. So none of these people are starting today, but they're up here. So I wanted to explain who they are and that they're incoming and they're getting their feet wet today. We're encouraging them to participate, ask questions and all of that. They'll become official again after March 1st. All right, back to you, Donna.
Okay, well, we're taking public comment. Jennifer, are there public comments?
Madam Chair, our first item today is public comment. Members of the public may hear, observe, and provide public comment virtually by registering through the following link, which can be found on reno.gov/meetings at https://links.reno.gov/3, the letter ZE2ZDS. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the NAB's agenda. The NAB may not take action upon any matter not agendized on today's agenda. When you're called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you're an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment, please raise your hand at this time. I see Amy Horvath, who will be providing public comment via Zoom.
And when you're finished calling her, can you shift to the, well, okay, keep it this way, but then we need to go to the bigger picture.
Yes. All right, Amy, will you please unmute yourself?
Sure.
And I know there's an item that you'd like me to show.
Yes, you could send if you could put up there was a newer version of it that I sent you.
Yes, that's the one I'm pulling up now.
Thank you.
1 second while I share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, and your 3 minutes begin now.
So I have 2 points to address with regards to the proposed amendment to the PUD. The first is the number of units in the PUD matching what is actually built. Currently, the PUD lists a total of 722 units to be built in the Ranchera neighborhood. And the actual realized total units are going to be somewhere between 401 if you all stick with the original PUD plans to 423 if you allow the developer the 29 homes that they're asking for on the equestrian center. It's imperative that the PUD reflects the actual total number of units. And so my ask is if there's going to be an amendment that the numbers are accurate. And the reason this is imperative is because it dictates how and when our HOA board includes resident appointed board members. The HOA is homeowner funded. It gets to make decisions about our money and our community and our property values. And currently we only have one resident appointed member because we've met the 25% threshold that the city has in its laws. Currently, the HOA is run by the developers, even though our homeowners already make up 50% of the neighborhood. In fact, to date, we make up more like 72%, and yet we only have a third representation on our HOA. If this doesn't constitute an egregious overreach of power, I don't know what does, and this is development power. There's no one to check our art committee. There's no one to check the HOA board. And as it stands with the 722 units, which are never going to be built in this neighborhood, our HOA would never actually take over, our residents would never take over the HOA. It's an egregious conflict of interest to have the developer controlling the homeowners association when these homes will never be built. I completely understand the developers wanting a seat at the table. That makes sense. But having them control our homeowners association does not make sense. Second, and I don't know how much time I have left because I can't see the timer, but the developer asking to rezone the equestrians.
You have 40 seconds left.
Okay. So changing the former equestrian site from PGOS to single family changes the intent of the original plans for development in the Ranchera community. When we purchased this community, we were told that equestrian center would provide open recreational space. Changing the zoning does not conform with Reno Municipal Code 18.08505G and E, as it does not demonstrate that there's a public benefit being gained from the approval of the PUD and adding in more houses. It does not create additional or better open spaces. It does not create additional public use facilities, parks, and open spaces. The developer claims that their proposal benefits current and future residents, but it actually does the opposite. Our
And
neighbor.
Amy, I apologize to interrupt, but your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, I just wanted to say our neighborhood is full of small cramped housing, and the last thing we need is more small cramped housing. I ask that you keep it as the 1 acre lots. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have registered public comment here as well. Our next public commenter is Bill Shrimps. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
That's okay. So my name is Bill Shrimp. I actually want to comment about P1, the ADU ordinance.
Can you, first of all, Bill, the microphone's right up here, if you could come up. And then, I'm gonna have them turn the screen back to our general view. There you go. Just before you start, so other people can see this. And if you
Okay.
could go to.
All right. There we go. Are we good?
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. Appreciate everybody in the NAB being here tonight. Thank you so much. Just want to make a couple of comments about the ADU ordinances that are coming around. Like anything the city does, I think there's probably some good things and some bad things about it. The general idea to build an ADU or a granny flat or mother-in-law's quarters in your backyard or in your property, I think that makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels. There's a little bit of concern with parking, but if you're only talking about 1 unit, you know, it's not a big issue. The thing that I am concerned about, I do a little bit of business as a real estate agent, is use restrictions. And so having an ADU built or granny flat built as a hotel. We like to call them short-term rentals, but really it's a hotel. That will change the value and the use of these types of properties in residential neighborhoods. So as we're looking at writing these rules and what's good and what's bad, I would just ask the city and planners and to really think about, is there a way we can put some sort of use restriction on this to make sure that, yeah, it is either a long-term rental that does go to actual housing for people who live here, as opposed to a hotel. We all need tourists, that's great, but we have plenty of hotels downtown and other places where hotels ought to be, so we don't need more hotels in the neighborhood, so. That's my 2 cents, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Appreciate
And
that.
before we go to the next public comment, first of all, I was remiss, I should introduce myself. I'm Naomi Dewar. I'm the, City Council member for Ward 2, and I wanted to welcome you all here. We have some pretty big agenda today. And some of you may remember, we used to go to 8:30. We only get to go to about 8 now, I think, 8:15. Second thing is that there will be a presentation by our staff on the ADUs. So you may want to hold your comments to hear the presentation. You don't have to, you can speak at public comment or on the item, you have a choice. But I just wanted to offer that there'll be a presentation on everything on the agenda. There's the ranchera, there's the ADUs, and there is the Brighton fence, and there is the Arlington office master plan. So you have a choice to speak up front or after you've heard the presentation. Okay. So when you call their name, ask them when they'd like to speak.
And Judy, I'd like to let you know that Mr. Roman Schoenberg is present. Sandy Bengston,
I'm gonna wait until after the meeting.
thank you. Alicia Powers,
I'd like to wait.
Joseph Solera. Thank you.
Is this close enough for it?
You're fine.
Perfect,
And it records you here and it shows there, so that's why you don't have to face that screen.
perfect. Howdy, my name is Joseph Silvera. Main reason I'm here is to advocate for ADUs. Main reason is because housing prices and rental prices have been going up to the point where a lot of individuals like myself can't afford housing. And so our previous solutions to that, which has involved a lot of money being thrown at developers, hasn't worked at this point. So we're gonna need to have more different variety of solutions to try to deal with this. And I do believe that this is an option to help increase the amount of density in areas that could help lower down prices and make people like me, who worked for Washoe County School District for almost a decade, actually be able to afford housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Beam,
My name is Ron Beam, and I bought a lot in Ranchera about 5 years ago. And finally sold my other house and moved down, built a house in the custom area. I currently have probably several $1 million in that new house we just moved in. I'm very tired of listening to you folks who do not understand what the original plans read and how you go around changing them to meet some developers' expectations, because all they want to do is make money on that property down there. For example, the equestrian area, 7 lots, nice lots, acre lots, and now we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 29. That kind of stuff is ridiculous. And as the other speakers have said, other things about your activity or inactivity is right. You're not addressing the right people, the right problem. We don't need low-income housing in an area like that. And I'm sorry that gentleman can't buy a home. There's many people that can't buy a home. But there are homes available. There is housing for low-income people available in other places. We don't need hotels. We need you to do your job and look after what the original plan was and quit giving up just for tax purposes, and that's what you're doing.
I'd like to ask you a quick question
Yes.
before you go. I don't usually, but I want to make sure. So are you speaking about opposition to the Ranchera request, or are you speaking in also maybe both opposition to the, okay, just wanted to make
Just
sure.
in
so we
general.
could Properly recorded.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. Terry Iconis?
I'm back there. I will speak after the presentation.
Thank you, Terry. Beth Dory?
Hurt my knee. Can I sit down when I?
Oh, yes, of course. And let me, oh, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Beth Dory. And this is about these 5 ADUs. I sent everyone on this panel what I'm just gonna read until I get the hook, okay? So I have show and tell. Here we go. ADUs are very expensive. They are not affordable. My daughter put an ADU in her backyard in California. For a 490 square foot ADU, it cost under $300,000. $609 a square foot. I own 24 homes and have 50 tenants in Reno. The overused phrase by city planners is that ADUs provide another tool in the toolbox for affordable housing, which is a misnomer. These homes don't pencil out from an investment standpoint to provide affordable housing. Besides, council will not enact short-term rental limits. And because of the cost of these homes, ADUs in Reno will most likely be used as short-term rentals. There are over 1,000 Airbnbs currently in Reno. In 2023, the city hired a consultant, Shane Phillips. He stated that along with allowing ADUs, council should limit STRs and consider mandating rental caps. Why is the council ignoring Mr. Phillips' recommendation for limiting STRs and to enact rental caps as a tool to provide affordable housing? Prior to the ADU workshop, some residents complained that they should be able to build what they want on their property. Planners need to educate these folks that it doesn't work that way. If they bought a house in the city, they must comply with building codes, planning, and be aware of the zoning laws. Just because you own a house in Reno does not mean you can build whatever you want on your property. Will the ADU applicant have to provide documentation that their CC&Rs allow for extra units? I have at least 3 homes on Green Ridge, Marthium, and Manor, which have valid CC&Rs dating back to the 1920s that prohibit these extra units. Any homeowner or city planner can call a title company to obtain CC&R information. Therefore, this information is easily available. Will the city planners create a database, carve out, or map of homes and properties with CC&Rs for which prevent these extra units? This way, the city can inform the applicant that their CC&Rs either allow or prohibit ADUs before the expense of drafting plans. Or will this land use change create lawsuits and neighbor wars for which could have been avoided? Then current boundary surveys. This is the house on Manor Drive. Oh, am I over?
Time's up. Thank you.
Passes around.
And you're also welcome to provide more public comment at the
Okay.
end. There's also a period of time then.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Johnson? Thank you. Steve? Vogel, maybe? Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Topol. I live on Spinnaker. I'm not here on any particular subject. I just want to get an update on the Lake Ridge proposal that was being discussed, and it's been in meetings with Naomi, and I haven't heard any public comment or anything yet. I just wanted to see if we can get an update and see where we were.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll address that in my my time to speak.
Thank you.
Okay.
Connie Silvera?
I'm Connie Silvera. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. And I'm speaking in favor of the ADU proposed ordinance. And I just want to say, I don't live in this ward, I live in Ward 3. And those are kind of probably half rental units down there. Our yards are really large. It's a very old neighborhood, very large yards. They're a big maintenance problem with weeds, and tenants can't afford nice yards. And so we just end up with messes, you know, cars parked on old lawns and things like that. And we would be much better suited to have little second units. I have one little house that only takes up 1/10 the space of the entire lot. And it happens to be another question is whether or not I can build an ADU in front of that, because the way it's laid out, it was built in the 30s. And so it sits way back. Can it be built in the front? And as long as you have the proper setbacks and enough space for all of that without encroaching on your neighbors, then I think it should be allowed. And we have lots of things on the books like Seattle, Mesa, Arizona, Austin, Denver. They all have, they've been working on these ADUs for a while. So I hope a lot of time has gone into researching what works in those areas, what doesn't. The proposal here is a 9,000 square foot lot, which is too large. These other areas go 3,200. In Seattle, Mesa, they don't have, I couldn't find a minimum. Austin, 5,700, Denver, 3,000, but for some reason ours is 9,000. And it just seems like that's more of an upper end for granny or nanny quarters or something. Where we really need it is affordable. And as far as parking, I don't like the idea that they're backing off on parking standards in Reno like they are in Portland. I think we should have some because it's created havoc down in Midtown. But yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for one parking space if you're going to add a unit. And we do have, most of the areas have plenty of space for that. One thing that came up at another meeting was some cities have a fee calculator. So you could just go on and plug in what you're considering doing without spending a lot of time and money. And be able to know, okay, this is about what the fees would cost, because sometimes they're so considerable that it's just not gonna work. I'd like to see the buffer zone around downtown explained a little better, because I don't quite understand what that is talking about. And I think that's about all I have this time. So I'm coming to all the neighborhood meetings because I'm interested with what other people are saying in other areas that I haven't thought of, or other ideas. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you. Tony Harsh?
Wow, this is always scary.
You were on the city council.
I
can't imagine
but this still scares the daylights out. I can
pass this around.
Sure, please. For those of you that haven't spoken before, and you'll understand, they tell us that the number one fear is speaking in public. Third down the line is dying. That means I'd rather be doing the eulogy than anything else. Okay, so yes, I was on city council, and I am passing around, Tony Harsh. So you can start with 3 minutes. I am passing around something that I produced because I've heard this all the time. I heard it before I was on the city council, during city council, after city council, and now I'm here with ADUs. I am representing Newlands Neighborhood Association tonight, and Newlands Neighborhood has been discussing granny flats or ADUs.
Can you speak up?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, we've been discussing this since I'm also passing around Sue Smith, who was a councilwoman before me. And so I tried to cover all of the things that we've heard over the years, all the concerns. And so you'll see a whole list. But what I'd like to address tonight specifically is coming from Newlands neighborhood. We've seen it all. We are a dense neighborhood. We have everything. We have apartments. We have duplexes. We have homes in alleys that are facing the alley. We have parking problems. We have sewers that go through our backyard with manholes in our backyard that have to be looked at every year. So I have sewers down there. What we're concerned about is, again, the short-term rental ordinance, that we have that in place before we start looking at ADUs, so that we don't have ADUs being used for hotel rooms that then take away from our mainstream of our hotels. The other thing is, how do we memorialize our CCNRs, our PUDs, our historic overlays, our HOAs? And the third is density. So we do operate with zones and density. Basically, an ADU is going to be applied on top of the density. So basically, you're going to end up with duplexes. And how does that affect the infrastructure? We don't just plot down houses. We have to, as a city, provide infrastructure, whether that's sewer, water, fire, electricity, things like that. The most important thing I worry about as a city is the sewer. And one of the fire marshals that has spoken before during our time of hearing about ADUs is, if we started a fire in Newlands, we would have a hard time putting it out because of the density, because of the streets, because of the parking. And so when you're thinking about one unit, we haven't limited how many bedrooms in each unit. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the time you spend at the NAF.
Thank you. Molly Monakai? Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did not.
Correct.
It took me a long time to learn how to pronounce it too.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, neighbors. My name is Molly Manukian, and I am speaking today with respect to the ADU ordinance as proposed. I am in opposition to that ordinance, and I would hope that everybody who's in a decision-making role has an opportunity to read that ordinance in detail and understand exactly what the details of it are. I think once that's done, it's pretty clear it's a bad idea for Reno. This ordinance targets single-family neighborhoods specifically, and every neighborhood that is a single-family neighborhood in the entire city. That is the target of this ordinance. And what it does is it allows for those neighborhoods, for the quality and the character and the density of those neighborhoods to be changed forever and for the worse. So there are a lot of pieces of information that you'll get from the city about these or about this particular ordinance, but it isn't really necessarily the information that you need to make an informed decision about what they're intending. And some of just the highlights, some of the things I would like to talk to you about are, one, these are directed at lots that are 9,000 square feet. That may sound like a large lot. It is not. That's a 1/4 acre lot. That's a middle-class lot. Those are the lots that are middle-class in Reno and throughout the country. So this isn't a giant lot that these structures can be built on. These structures will be built and they can be built as per the ordinance as drafted, 5 feet from anyone else's property line. They can be 29 feet tall, 5 feet from your property line. That's what we're talking about. So when you think granny unit, that's not a granny unit. This is a commercial development intended for developers to make money and line their pockets with ADUs. So you can see a PowerPoint and the ADU might look really cute and adorable, but that's not what's going to be built here. This construction for ADUs is very expensive. The average homeowner is not going to be able to afford this. This doesn't result in affordable housing. This results in real estate developers buying up our existing available housing and converting those houses into duplexes and stuffing as many people as they can in there. So ask the city, ask them, how are they going to enforce the parking restrictions that they claim they have? They can't enforce them. Ask them, how is this going to increase the density on a 9,000 square foot lot? They'll tell you it's going to double the density, 2 structures instead of 1. We will no longer in Reno have a single family dwelling neighborhood. They won't exist if this passes. Single family dwelling units or single family homes in Reno are the backbone of this town. They are everything that's right about this town and everything that's working. Don't let them be destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Lemons? Susan Lemons?
I don't think she's speaking.
No, thank you. Blaine Colgan? No. Jim Colgan? Thank you. Pat Brown? Okay, thank you. Rosalind Zimmerman? Nope. Sally Tate? Thank you.
I'm a transplant from Ward 1. So we have become part of Ward 2. Welcome. And I also am part of the Newlands area. And this is deja vu for us. It's like rehashing topics again and again until the city and council approves all of the changes. And this is in direct discussion with ADUs. I haven't seen too much not approved as it comes to development in our city recently. And using ADUs as an avenue to fight a housing shortage is a poor justification, and it's already been discussed. Let's just take one segment of the city, the historical district. When this district was enacted, it was with full intent to preserve our history and heritage. Many cities throughout this country do an amazing job to respect such a distinction. I was recently in San Antonio and stayed in the historic King William district, where they follow a very supportive and restrictive development criteria. And keep in mind, they also expanded their river walk to include the rustic areas of natural settings along the river in conjunction with their commerce section, which includes all the restaurants along the river walk. And that's one example. So here the city council planners have proposed no restrictions in the historic district and would permit building on the designated lot size. Again, newer developments with HOA, CC&Rs are excluded. And again, as Tony mentioned, the infrastructure of our old systems are ignored. I mean, I have pavers in my backyard and I have a small yard. It's like 5,000 square feet. So I guess I'm technically exempt at this point, but they would have to dig up all of that just to get to the sewers. So here the city council, oh, I already said that. Based on this information, it appears to me that the city does not respect the historic district. Will permit infill and structures on the property in this area, which meet the criteria in any other region. I wonder how many people on the Council and Planning Commission actually know the details and history of Reno and want to preserve it. It almost appears that they want to copy other cities, and ADUs is not the answer to solving our housing shortage. We all know that. It's time to think twice about protecting the historic region. You only get one chance. Let's make it right before it's gone. Instead, we'll see more cement, less trees, high carbon footprint, and increased temperatures in our beautiful Truckee River Basin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Tate?
Hello, I'm Tom Tate. I'm Sally's husband, and I live in the same house she does. We're in Newlands Manor, We're newcomers to Ward 2. This is the fourth time I've given a presentation about ADUs and opposing them at a neighborhood Ward 1 meeting and twice at the city council. And in the past, I've argued that ADUs are only really attractive to outside investors who have no stake in the neighborhood and are only worried about cash flow. I've also argued that it betrays the trust of people who bought into what they thought was a single family house neighborhood, and now it no longer is. ADUs seem attractive because they seem to be free. Just pass this ordinance and you get housing for free. It just magically appears. But if you know anything, you realize that additional housing requires infrastructure, as Tony described. And you need electricity, you need sewer, you need water, you need gas, and then you need the other things, the fire protection, schools, and so forth, police. You need all this stuff. And if by ignoring that, you're degrading the quality of life. I live in a house that's over 95 years old. And the utilities were sized for things back in the 1930s. What happens when we start building substantial numbers of ADUs and people start plugging in their electric cars? What's going to happen? Who's going to pay for the upgrade of the infrastructure? Who's going to pay for the increased sewer lines? And as people have pointed out, the sewer lines go behind the houses, and it'd be disastrous to have to improve the capacity of that. The other thing is most of the houses built in Reno after the 1930s have CCNRs. Most of the houses built before then do not. It turns out I'm in the transition area where my last part of the Newlands developments actually has CCNRs that prevent multifamily dwellings on a house, on a lot. However, all the old neighborhoods, and I've talked to the reporter about this, almost all the old neighborhoods do not have any type of CCNR. These all would allow ADUs. At the very least, I think that you should not allow ADUs in historic districts. There's a reason we have historic districts. We're trying to preserve something from the past that's valuable. And all you have to do is drive around some of the nicer old neighborhoods and start thinking about what happens when you have to go in there and rip everything up to increase infrastructure. We already have parking problems and it will only get worse.
Thank you.
Tom, just a quick question, and
Sure.
to ask Sally, are you against ADUs only in Newlands or for the whole city?
I'm opposed to them in historic districts.
Historic.
And I believe that in general, you can't build ADUs in most places in the city because there are already CCNRs against it. So it's a fallacy that you're really going to get any. If you have, large lot residential 2.5, yeah, okay, ADU is fine. But in dense areas of the city, which is where people want to build them, I think it's a mistake.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Penny Whitaker?
My name is Penny Whitaker, and I am a resident of the Ranchera Latigo Homes, and I've been there at least for 4 years. I lived in Collin Ranch before. When I first decided to move down here, I really liked it and was told of all the open space and the shopping, etc. And it was very good. But lately, sadly, I've learned that the investors, all they care about is the money that they spend, and they don't care about the folks there. Only to build houses, one on top of the other, and all crowded together. And the crowded areas is too much to comprehend. And as far as a fire goes, God forbid for us, right now, it's almost impossible to get out of Ranchera area during the commuter time. The traffic is just backed up. We have 2 exits at that area, and It's just impossible to get out and in an emergency, there would be no way. We need the county to do another traffic study in the area. It's very inadequate. Because of the construction that the investors they're trying to rezone all the areas to have more housing there. And it's not adequate now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Harmon?
I'm gonna switch gears and talk about a different topic that's up for approval next week. So thank you all for your time. Right.
Right.
Thank you. Can I stand over here? Sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you. My name is Dan Harmon. I'm here to discuss project MUP 250009, the building of a Jiffy Lube on the corner of Hunter Lake Drive and Mayberry Drive in a school zone. I ask you, the committee, to please urge the planning board to not approve this project based on strong neighborhood opposition. I've lived in this neighborhood for 23 years. I met my wife, who was born and raised in this neighborhood, and we have two wonderful children that attend Hunter Lake Elementary School. A drive-through auto shop is not appropriate for this lot for numerous reasons. In fact, until recently, the neighborhood commercial zoning on that lot did not allow drive-through businesses until a zoning change was made in January, right before the sale of this lot. I don't recall being informed of that change or having any input as a neighborhood. Our neighborhood residents are overwhelmingly opposed to a drive-through auto shop being built on this lot. My wife was told by the planning manager of this project, Tristan Rodriguez, today that over 200 comments have been submitted, all in opposition to this project, and yet another 175 comments to go through today, and only one comment was in favor. We're also told by Mr. Rodriguez that concerns were mostly for traffic congestion in that intersection and the safety, especially for the children who use that intersection to walk to school every day. Our family has personally been affected by this. Our son was hit by a car in November 2023 in that intersection, and very luckily he was not bodily injured, but it was a traumatic experience. We attended the next zone council Ward 2 meeting and expressed our concerns for the safety of that intersection. We've recently been informed that safety is now a #1 priority for Reno, especially with all the tragic pedestrian accidents that have occurred, and there's a 0 pedestrian fatality priority for the city now in place. In conversation with Mr. Rodriguez, he informed us that unless a safety or traffic code or zone violation is found with the project, it will be approved. He also informed us that the community opposition to the project and concerns for the safety of our children and pedestrians does not count in consideration for approving this project, only code requirements. I find that very, very disheartening that the well-being of the neighborhood on a project zoned neighborhood commercial with neighborhood in the zoning name, that our well-being is not a factor in the approval process. Besides safety factors, the community is absolutely not in need of an auto shop at this proposed location. There are already 2 other auto shops less than a mile from the proposed location. Sierra Care, business of 50 years serving the community, and a Valvoline quick oil change, all less than a mile away. So there are no benefits of this project to the community and only potential negatives. There are also environmental concerns as well, with quantities of oils and chemicals at a business like this. And very importantly, the noise pollution of impact wrenches and other tools operating 10 hours a day, 7 days a week in a mostly residential neighborhood where people enjoy walking with their family and friends and pets around the neighborhood. So I urge you to please attend the planning committee tomorrow I urge you to tell them not to approve the project before it's approved on the 28th. Thank you for your time.
So Dave?
To be clear,
Yes.
my understanding is this is a project that did not come to the NAB and will not go to the planning commission. It is what they call a minor
Yes.
CUP. It goes to staff for a 30-day review. The only way that it would go to city council is if it will happen to be appealed. Who knows what they're gonna say? You just said that the staff member said it would be approved, but he too has a boss. So I really don't know what the planning division will decide. And based on that, what you will decide. So I just wanted to be clear.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening tomorrow night, but I don't believe the Sun do you know?
Well, we do have a planning commission
Right.
tomorrow night, so I think he's suggesting that people could go speak at planning.
Yes, I would ask
No,
Ward
decided
2 to
that
speak on our
item's
behalf.
not-
Yeah, it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
That's what I'm explaining.
Okay,
And it won't be reviewed by them. And it's not on the council's agenda. It won't be reviewed by us. So focus your efforts where the decision's being made.
so we have to go to appeal.
I mean, I don't know what they're gonna come out with, so I don't know,
Okay.
but that would be the next step if you're not happy with the decision. Okay? All right, thank
Thank
you.
you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Lou Gage?
Yeah, my name's Lou Gage and I live about a mile north of here. And I have been in that house for 50 years. And back in about 1988, by accident, I found out that the city of Reno at the commissioners meeting the next day was going to pass the granny flats issue. That's what they were pawning it off on the public as those days were granny flats, so that your granny could come live there. And so I showed up at that city council meeting, and I was the only person in the entire city of Reno that showed up to speak against granny flats. Now, I've read a number of papers that the city of Reno has put out over the years that say that when a change is made from a single family dwelling neighborhood or any other change that's made in the properties, the various properties that are here in Reno, that it should be an improvement to the area. It should improve the quality of life for the occupants and the people that are living in that neighborhood. And add to the peace and tranquility that the neighborhood has in it at that time. And so I don't understand how the city council or the planning commission can consider that having these granny flats added to the neighborhood can do any of those things. I think that the city council and the planning commission are far smarter than I am, but I don't think that they've heard the complaints of the people that are against having these granny flats. I would like to see the motion of allowing these in the city to be tabled as it was after the time that I spoke in about 1988 against this. It was tabled at that time, and I don't know exactly what has taken place with regard to the city council meetings, as what has been resolved to do about this issue. But anyone that has half a brain, I think, can know that possibly doubling the density of the neighborhood and increasing the traffic, increasing the cars that are parked there in the neighborhood, and all those things can benefit the people that have purchased a house, especially in a single family area. When I bought my house, I bought it because it was a single family neighborhood. And it was a nice neighborhood with no problems at all back in 1975 when I bought that house.
Thank you, Lou. I apologize. Your 3 minutes are up.
My time is up already? I thought it just started.
Thank you.
Okay, anyhow, I think the granny flats should be put to bed and kept there.
Thank you. Linda Cross?
Hi, everybody. I'll try and talk loud enough because I know I'm having trouble hearing over there.
Or stand up, that always helps.
Oh, okay, I'll stand up. I can do that. Still, anyhow, here we go. Okay, I have several issues. I probably won't get through all of them in 3 minutes. The Plumas property, and that development, the BLM land that they're talking about reclaiming, the ADUs. And the ADUs have been covered pretty good, but I still am in opposition to that. And also I don't know if any of you are familiar with the data centers that they want to put in Reno. But how much is required in power for those, and that is for the purpose of AI. And it's equivalent to more than 4,000 houses worth of power. And in addition to that, it requires water to cool down the equipment once it's been used. There was a big study on it on 2020. I would advise you all to try and listen to that because I won't be able to do it in this 2 minutes, but I mean, I'm not against progress and AI has some benefits, but I'm seeing what the other benefits are not as good. And the British engineers and the British Royal Engineers are concerned about that right now. The Plumas project, I don't know how many of you live in the Lake Ridge area. I back up to Lakeside. It's absolutely ludicrous the way they want to change that and the height levels and the number of units they want to put in. There's not enough parking right now for the people who actually live in the Lake Ridge apartments. And adding those buildings would be deferential to everybody in the neighborhood. Plus, I don't care who you are, anybody that goes in a corner there, the traffic is immense every day. I mean, you cannot go, there's no time any day that you can go to the corner when it's not backed up. In addition to that, anybody who thinks widening the streets for 1 block between Lakeside and Plumas is gonna take the traffic and make it better is an idiot. I mean, you know, that's like putting somebody through a tunnel and, you know, putting a tunnel in between 2 places and saying, okay, well, this is only 2 lanes, this is gonna be 3 lanes, but you got 4 lanes coming in and 3 or 4 on the other side. I mean, just, it's absolutely ludicrous, and I would hope that people would come to the meetings and speak against this because, you know, the council approved, and not Naomi, but the rest of the council approved all those changes when Reno Land and what's the other one? I can't think of the name, but anyhow, when they came in with their false statements about how they just needed it so that they could put things on top of the building. The 55-foot should be reinstated and the 2-story limitation. Oh, God, okay. And the ADUs, I said, I disagree with that because of the sewer, the electricity and what it will do to the neighborhoods. Because you're gonna see all these people in these little ass backyards putting stuff in. And they can't do it. And there's no place for them to park anyhow. Anyhow, I'll let you go.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
And Madam Chair, that is all the public comment that we have at this time, but there will be an additional period. I know we have some additional public comment coming in. So at the end of the meeting, you will be heard as well. If you have additional comments to make, please fill out the form that's up front and bring it back here. Yes, and on each item as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who came and spoke. Please repeat your comments at council at a decision-making place. All right, there's no more public comments, is that correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then we'll proceed to A3, the approval of the agenda. I would like to remove an item.
I'm sorry, can you please keep it down? We can't hear. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're moving on to item A3, approval of the agenda. Before we do that, I'd like to change the order of
And Madam Chair, before we change the order, I do want to let you know that item C1 was withdrawn this morning.
Oh,
So I don't have any additional updates as to when it will come to Ward 2,
okay.
but that's what I know for now.
Okay, well, I would like to allow the people on the Arlington Office Master Plan. They don't have a presentation, so I'd like to allow them to hear their item prior to Ranch House.
Thank you.
Do that one first.
that require a motion?
No, the approval of the agenda, I'm sorry, thank you, yes. Okay, so now, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with changes?
To approve the change. Stan Dowdy, I second the motion. To approve the change.
Thank you, then the agenda been approved. So next,
Now, call for the vote.
Oh, we need a vote.
Yes.
I'm sorry, thank you. Forgot.
And I'm sorry, who made the motion?
It was Audrey Keller.
Thank you,
Seconded by Stan Dowdy.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No,
What
okay.
was the motion?
To approve the agenda with just one change of the order. Of things. Okay. Okay, so with that, we need to, get a motion for the approval of the minutes for the January 21st, 2025 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve that, or does anyone have any changes?
A motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Thank you. Second?
Now, Member Keller, I believe you had some changes to the minutes.
I had a question, if it was appropriate. I believe we had a roll call that, Madam, Vice Mayor Dewar was not present. I don't know if that needs to be written in the minutes.
Yes, we can correct that. Judy, did you catch that?
No, I'm sorry, and I missed who made and seconded the motion and, yeah, sorry.
Okay, on the agenda, it was seconded by Stan Dowdy.
No, I got the agenda. We're on the minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yes, on the
Okay.
minutes, there is a change for Councilmember Dewar was not present
Okay,
For what?
for the January meeting.
January meeting.
Exactly. Thank you.
And that was the only change. Thank you, Judy.
So I move to approve the minutes with the revision. Audrey Keller.
Can I get a second on that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Roman Schoenberg, can you please state your name for the record?
Roman Schaumburg for the record. I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. That's approved the minutes, January 21st. Next, council liaison report, please.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna make this quick as I can, given the length of the agenda today. First, I wanted to just give a 1 minute introduction, and in fact, I'm gonna save that for next meeting when you're official. Given the interest of time. Number 2, I was requested to give an update on Lake Ridge, so the Lake Ridge project, when it was heard by council, was continued to, and what we were hearing was an appeal. We didn't make a decision, A or nay. We asked for it to be continued to give an opportunity for the applicant and the appellant to meet. They have met a couple times. They're still, to my knowledge, meeting. It's supposed to come back to the April 23rd, I think it is, agenda, unless there's a mutual decision by the parties to move that up. So that's the status. If you wanted to know more detail, you could call the appellant. So she's basically in charge of this process. And the other thing I want to mention is on Wednesday's council agenda, we have an item that will be about data centers. There's been a lot of discussion in our community. I have recommended actually a moratorium on data centers until we get the language worked out, what criteria they should have to meet. I don't know if that will be passed or not. I don't think it's actually agendized for a moratorium discussion. But what is agendized is the beginning of a regulation process. My concern, as a previous speaker said, is how much energy is used by data centers. There have been 3. So, and one has been appealed, and during the appeal process, it was approved. Although I think 2 or 3 of us did vote against it because so much is unknown. That particular one was a 30-megawatt plant, and that 30-megawatt plant will use the same amount of energy as the Steamboat geothermal plant is a 30-megawatt plant, so if you can imagine. And also it is equivalent to the energy used by 4,000 to 5,000 homes. Not all data centers are that big. Not all of them are that small. Some of them do use a lot of water and some do not. So we just believe, some of us believe that it's important to get it right. These are the very first data centers coming in the last 10 or so years. And so we want to make sure that we do it right. That process may take some time, but if it's an issue that you're interested in, Please pay attention, please get involved, and please let us know what you're thinking.
What is it? Excuse me, I'm sorry, Donnie, did you say it's tomorrow or the next?
No, it's the following Wednesday, so the council meeting, you have I think it's February
26.
26th. Okay. That's really probably a pretty big highlight. I went over the whole agenda today with our staff. There's a lot of interest. If you're interested in knowing what the city council is discussing, I encourage you to go on to our website, and there's a very at the top, it says meetings. And you can go to the council meeting and see what's on the agenda. The other thing I really encourage you to do, and I encourage every resident to do this, is there is every 2 weeks a report of what development applications have been filed. Comes out every 2 weeks. And all you have to do is go on our website, type in newsletters, and up will pop about 25 different newsletters that you can follow. This is Ward 1, this is Ward 2, so you'll be able to sign up for Ward 2 if you'd like. You can also sign up for this development newsletter, which is called Development Projects. You can also sign up for other NABs. You don't have to be a member, I get them all. And there's a lot of other separate topics such as trees or horses or ADUs, those kind of things that you can sign up and get information on. So I'm gonna cut it off here. Usually we have a Q&A, but I'm really interested in preserving the time for the presentation and the Q&A for those. So let me ask those, or a burning question about anything I've spoken about tonight.
Anything on the deal and land thing, I didn't get just.
I wasn't really sure what you were referring to, so perhaps after you and I could get together, okay?
Talk about the reclaim,
The what?
the reclaiming some of the land, like for the soccer arena that the Montes want to put down. South Meadows.
To my knowledge, an arena has been nixed, if you will, by the recreation departments reviewed it. It hasn't gone to their commission, or if it has, if anybody's been following it, I believe. Has anybody been following it?
They're done.
It's over.
The county has.
Right, and it was on county land. So, okay, well, with that, I'm gonna shift to our next presenter.
Thanks very much.
I'm sorry.
Jennifer, staff liaison report, item
Thank you.
6, please.
Well, you are the next presenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Alvarez, Council Relations Liaison for the record. I do have some updates that I'd like to share with you, and I will be brief as well. I would just like to share with you some information, just some engagement opportunities within the city. There's a budget-friendly cooking class tomorrow at the Elks Lodge. And you typically have to enroll online. So if you just go to the reno.gov, you will find the link there. And I can also share my presentation so you can click there. The Western Lights Festival is occurring downtown from Thursday, I believe, through Saturday,
Right.
Sunday, Saturday. And it starts at 5 and it goes to 10 p.m. and it's a free event for the community. Just like Councilmember Dewar said, we do have some new NAB members, Sean McCoy and Kristen Montan, with alternates Pat Fischel and Michael Ginsburg. So at this time, there are no vacancies. The Ward 2 NAB is completely full, which is great. We also have a program called Community Champions. If you know anybody within your ward that you would like to nominate and highlight for their work within your ward, please let us know. We would love to show them some appreciation and bring that item to the NAB so that they can be recognized as well. As Councilmember Dewar said, you can always sign up for the newsletters to receive any information of updates or within your ward and also within the city. Reno Direct is our program whenever you want to report a pothole or any issues within your community. They're available in person Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. And I've listed their phone number there as well. And you can also submit requests online, and you can also reach out to me and I can forward those out. So upcoming meetings, like Councilmember Dewar said, the city council meeting will be on the 26th at 10 a.m. at City Hall. Planning Commission will be March fifth at 6 p.m. And the next Ward 2 NAB will be on March 18th with Planning Commission following the next day, the next Wednesday. And that's all I had.
Thank you, appreciate that information, and now we're on to item B, business item B1. Presentation of about accessory dwelling units. City of Reno staff.
You wanna go right over there?
Okay, is the microphone?
She's gonna move this for you.
Yes, cool. Hi, everyone.
See you.
I know, nice to see you too. My name's Grace McAdin. I am a senior management analyst for development services and planning. And I'm presenting on accessory dwelling units. Before I get started, I know a lot of you feel, yes, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I know a lot of you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole with ADUs. You smashed them 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or in the 80s. That's a record. Whoever came in the 80s and talked about granny flats, that's a new one. So I like to think of it more as an avalanche, as every time we bring it forward, we're not necessarily turned down, but council said it's not right yet. Go back to the drawing board. It's not right yet. So that's why it keeps coming up. And we're trying to make sure that we get as much buy-in as we can. We're never gonna make everyone happy, but we've been doing road shows on this particular ordinance for the past 2-3 years. We went to council, got their feedback, then we went back to council and got more feedback. We did a survey. I've been on the news, which is not fun. So I think we're picking up people as we go, but this has been 2-3 years in the making. And it's just a draft, so it can change, it can get turned down. It can morph as we go, so all feedback, I wrote down public comment, and I'll get them printed as well. So we're trying to get as much feedback as we can on this end, so that you guys don't feel like you have to show up at the last minute and say, staff did a terrible job, I'm just now learning about this. Next slide. So first, what is an ADU? It's an accessory dwelling unit. Sometimes people call it an additional dwelling unit, and that's wrong. It's accessory in nature. So it's a secondary housing unit that shares a lot with a primary home. This depiction on the right, I think it's just, we all know what an ADU can look like. But it might be a garage conversion, it might be a basement conversion, you might not see it, it might be attached, it might be detached. There's a lot of depictions that you might see. Next slide. So like I said, this is just a draft, nothing has been adopted yet. So if you came to City Hall today and you wanted to build an ADU, we would say you can't and send you back to the drawing board. However, I would like to point out, you can build a guest unit. So what's the difference between a guest unit or guest quarters and an ADU? It's just a kitchen. That ends up being a stove. So today, you could build guest quarters 5 feet in some places on the property line today. I know, scary, but we don't see it very often because people have pride in their private property, but you could do it today. That's not changing with this ordinance. Go back, sorry. I'm on a dive track. So in 2023, council initiated a text amendment related to ADUs. So council directed staff to initiate a text amendment. They said, we're not doing enough, do more. We want this ADU thing to move forward, or at least we want to try. Like I said, this draft can still be changed. We're hoping that any input will get more buy-in so that we kind of slowly start to get less and less people opposed to it at these meetings. Next slide. Allowed, I am listening, I swear. See, I heard that. Allowed zoning districts. So this was a negative that I heard some people said, we don't want it in single family districts. No, we don't want more units in our single family districts. But an accessory dwelling unit by its name, by the nature of it, is accessory to a single family dwelling unit. So when we did our research, we said other jurisdictions have them accessory in single family zoning districts. That's what was proposed, and based on feedback we got on the front end before creating the draft, that's what we thought, okay, we're on the right track. Like I said, that can change, but that's where we're at today. So anywhere a single family home is allowed,
this accessory dwelling unit would be permitted based on this draft. Next slide. Lot size. So I've heard a lot of this. Most people that I've heard from have said, ah, gosh, it's just too large of a minimum lot size. Here tonight, I've heard, well, we just don't want it anywhere. So it's not big, or it's too small, and we think it may be on half-acre lots, it makes sense, or 2.5 acre, like, sure, do whatever you want. But for context, I think 9,000 square feet, sometimes people don't really understand how big that is. So I wanted to provide some areas that maybe we're all familiar with. How large is 9,000 square feet? Where would these things be built? This is on the corner of Arlington and California. I'm sure you all kind of know that corner. In this area, if this ordinance passed today, you couldn't see an ADU there. The only lot that is large enough is a commercial lot, and that's that 14,000 square foot lot. So in this area, there would not be an accessory dwelling unit based on the size of these lots. Next slide. Oh, I forgot where this one was. So this one is north of Plum. You can see Marsh there on the left-hand side. Okay, we're seeing some larger lots. This is an area you might see ADUs based on this ordinance, good or bad. But you'll see the 9,500 square foot lot, 11,000, 12,000 square foot lots. So that's kind of where you'll see some of these accessory dwelling units if this ordinance passed today. Next one, or next slide. This is one more area. It's up by the University Ridge neighborhood. Socrates on your left-hand side of the screen. These are also some larger lots. So there might be some ADUs based on this ordinance in this type of a neighborhood. And then just to really hammer the point home, this is a map of the city. Everything in green is some lots that are over 9,000 square feet. So yeah, it's a significant area of the city. Zooming in though, you'll see some of those red splotches are in those infill neighborhoods. And those are lots that are under 9,000 square feet. So just for reference, where would we see these? Next slide. Okay. Number and size. So most jurisdictions have one ADU per lot, one accessory dwelling unit per lot. There's some jurisdictions that say unlimited. We thought that's probably too far, especially based on this crowd tonight. One ADU per lot seems more consistent with what other areas are doing, and more incremental in nature. So the size of the ADUs was to follow other accessory structure standards. So like I said, today you can build a guest quarters on the property line or 5 feet back, and the height is based on the zoning district. It can't be larger than the primary structure. So all of those things the ADU would follow, with one exception. We were told by council, we don't like that 0-foot lot line. It's too invasive, it's too much. So we said, fine, no 0-foot lot line for ADUs. So it's more restrictive than a guest quarters. I get so excited about the images. This image is just another depiction of kind of how the neighborhood might look if you see these ADUs. They have to, Connie, unfortunately, they have to be in the back of a lot. Any accessory structure has to be behind the primary structure without some sort of variance. But you might see them, like I said, in a basement conversion, attic conversion. And we see these a lot right now, but they're guest cottages. They can't be rented out and they don't have kitchens.
What is that DAD?
Oh, some people call DADUs detached accessory dwelling units, so an accessory is attached, but we just call them all ADUs. Sorry for that. Parking and design. So when we did the survey where we got over 2,000 respondents, parking was a big concern. So we said, fine, let's do one off-street parking space dedicated to each ADU. Is that enough? Is that too many? Is that not enough? I've heard it on both ends of the spectrum that either it's too many or it's not enough. Each house is required to have, it depends on the square footage. Usually it's about 2 to 3 parking spaces per house. And this would be separate from that. So they would have to have one separate from the primary house. The primary house has to meet its parking requirements and the ADU has to meet its parking requirements. Some design standards we've heard from some architects, get rid of design standards. We want to be creative. We want to, design and have some creativity and be able to, design some really cool things. Unfortunately, if you just get rid of all design requirements, some people will build something really cool.
some people will try to put the cheapest thing up on a lot. So we tried to meet in the middle somewhere. Accessory structures have some design restrictions and requirements, and those are, you have to use similar materials, roof pitch has to be similar. Colors, materials, roof pitch, things that are gonna be somewhat compatible to the primary structure as well as the neighborhood that it is in. Next slide. All right, so we're at the very beginning of this process, like I said. There's still plenty of opportunity to get involved. We will have 3 virtual meetings, starting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. All of the virtual meetings are on our website. I will be going to all of the NABs, so I will be hitting 6 and 5 next month. And 4 on Thursday. So if you would like to come to a NAB that's not yours, feel free. If you'd like to come to the virtual meetings, and if you can't make them, you can call me, email me, and I can answer your questions or concerns. That's where we're at. So NAB community meetings, planning commission will be going for feedback. So not necessarily a recommendation yet, but we'll say, here's the draft ordinance, here's the comments we've received, and see what planning commission wants to do as far as the feedback and what recommendations they might have. Then we'll go to city council for feedback. So no first reading yet, just saying, here's where we're at. We've gotten this much feedback. What would you like the changes, or what changes would you like to see? And then we're hoping to go back to council for an adoption of first reading, second reading in late summer of this year. Slide. And that's my phone number and my email address. Please call me. I know that I've talked to some of you here. I'm just trying my best to get something that a lot of people are in favor of. I know I'll never win everyone over. But if, I don't have an agenda here. I'm just trying to do what we were directed to do and do it in the right way. And so that we don't get to council and it dies. Let's at least get something passed so that we don't have whack-a-mole in 5 more years. That's my presentation.
Over to you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are there public comments?
Well, I think you want to ask the NAB first and then, or whatever you want to do, but at some point.
Okay, I thought it was.
What's that?
Okay, do any of the board members have comments?
Oh.
I would like to comment. Quick question, Patrick Fisher for the record. Do the guest quarters that are currently legal, do they have a parking requirement?
They do not.
They do not.
No, I believe the way that would be allocated into your square footage of your home. So it would, let's say you're required, 1 space for every 1,200 square feet. That square footage would be added in, so that would increase your parking requirement for the whole lot, but it wouldn't be separate from your house.
Thank you.
Stan, I think.
Stand Dowdy for the record. Now, the ADUs, the people that own the property, they would have the say so as to whether it would be built there or not.
Correct. Yes, so we couldn't build an ADU on someone's private property. If someone wanted to build one.
No.
Yep, no, thank you for that question.
Kind of gonna be mandatory.
No.
I wanted to make sure that.
Thanks. Yes.
Roman Schomburg for the record, can you describe maybe in a little more detail the differences between guest quarters and what the ADUs would be as things are today and what they would be? And will multiple addresses be allowed, or they have to be rezoned to multiple?
Sure. So the only difference is that an ADU would have a full kitchen and a guest quarters cannot. And then per definition, you can't rent out your guest quarters. So it would have to be, some sort of extension of your primary home.
So, sorry, with the rental, how would that be enforced?
Our enforcement is complaint based for those rentals, so that is difficult for enforcement of those guest quarters if they're being rented out or not. I mean, for example, I could rent out a room in my house or up at that neighborhood up off University. I know those are all rented out separately. Each room is rented separately. Really difficult for us to regulate that. As far as short-term rentals go, we currently do not regulate short-term rentals. But I've said at a couple of the meetings, if council says we either want to do a separate short-term rental ordinance, which was the direction
we don't have one initiated at the time, but there was, let's do a separate one because short-term rentals aren't just the problem of ADUs, it's a separate problem. So we can either do a separate ordinance or we can work it into this ordinance and say they can't be used as short-term rentals. There's a couple ways we could do that.
One more thing, can we describe the parking requirement, is it based on square footage or is it?
For
For
ADUs, it would just be one per accessory dwelling unit. And the size is regulated, they can't be larger than the primary structure. There's some differences based on zoning, if what size they can be, but generally they can't be larger than the primary structure.
Thank you.
And then he asked about a separate address.
Oh, yes, thank you. Addressing is handled by Washoe County, but it would, I believe at one of the other meetings, someone had told us it would be a separate address. It would be like a half or A or B or something, whatever the county is doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Audrey Keller for the record. Coming from a community that had short-term rentals that turned our city into a circus, I would highly recommend to city council to create the ordinance first, very strong ordinance regarding short-term rentals. You're putting the cart before the horse, because if you don't have the short-term rental policy in place, you won't be able then to regulate it once it becomes a mess. So I would highly recommend that this is the cart, the horse is the short-term rental ordinance. Also, what was very successful is that ADUs became very popular in tourism areas like Reno for skiing and whatnot, or travel. They limited the percentage of ADUs in a particular neighborhood not to exceed a certain number. That was Bend, Oregon. That was a very important step. Also, cap on the number of occupants in an ADU, very important. And also, I noticed on your illustration that you had an illustration with a garage, a unit above a garage that exceeded the height of the house. I say that's not a good thing because it changes the nature of the homes in the neighborhood. And I don't think that the ADU should change the flavor of the neighborhood. They're meant not to be seen. So we would regulate them to not exceed the current height of the property. Thank you.
Michelle, for the record. I love the history of Reno. So have you talked about, or has it been thrown out there about eliminating or not allowing them in storage districts?
So I know in the past, the 2018 ordinance that was initiated, it was in there to have a carve out from the recent direction. It was, let's just do it citywide at this point. There's some pros and cons. I mean, Reno's growing whether we like it or not. So kind of how do we want to see that growth? And each neighborhood is going to grow. So where do we want to see that growth in each neighborhood? And that was kind of why the direction was, let's not do a carve out at this point, but like I said, it's draft. If we see some feedback that they want to do it, we could.
I feel like we've destroyed a lot of our history right now. And I think we need to preserve what we have left.
1 second. Are there any other questions from the board? Comments from the
So I
board?
have a comment after the board.
Okay,
I have any other board members? Okay. I just wanted to say, when this came up before, I was one that supported a carve out for historic neighborhoods. And then at the time, I suggested that Newlands or any other group come up with like a separate historic overlay or some type of definition in our criteria. Because so many people from Newlands didn't want them, but I also heard from a lot of people in other neighborhoods that they did want them. So I really thought there was a path forward. I didn't think it was an all or none. I am open-minded. I'm still listening and learning. That's why we have this on the NAB tonight. But, and the second comment or question I had was, a person earlier made comments about how do we track CC&Rs? And can we, even if we can't enforce, because I've often heard this, but it seems that we could advise and let people know, you're in so-and-so neighborhood, they have a reported CC&Rs, and we would not approve those things in those areas that have those restrictions.
Yeah.
So I support that. I know there's many neighborhoods with CC&Rs, but I think we have to respect those. Those are put in place for a reason. And I think that this isn't meant to upend those. This is meant to work with those. And lastly, I think Audrey had some really good suggestions. Are any of those currently in the draft? Things like limiting the height, putting a cap on number of occupants or, limiting the total number in a certain block? Have those been discussed?
So sorry, let me start with your last questions and then I'll go back to the CCNR question. So as far as the percentage in neighborhood and then the limiting the amount of people in the ADU, that has not been discussed as far as this particular draft. Just for enforcement, we could put that in there, but the the jurisdictions that seem to do it seem to have enforcement issues with it, just how to regulate it. Because you don't report the amount of people in your house. As far as the percentage in each neighborhood, that might be a little easier to enforce, is not in this current draft. And then the height of the ADU, that would follow other accessory structures, and that, when we came to council, I think it was in June or July, we had said we want to make them smaller than the primary house, and there was a couple council members that said, no, we want them to be as tall as other accessory structures can be. So in this current draft, it's not required to be smaller than the primary structure, but in the 2018 draft it was, so we can always add that in there as well.
Well, how would it, let's say you picked one of Audrey's 3 recommendations, which is the one on number per block. How does a change get into your draft? So you're gonna hear all of this.
Yes.
Do you have to hear it 4 times or 4 nabs? Do you have to just say, oh, that's a good idea and make a change? How would this amendment of your draft work?
That's a good question. So I'm not making any changes. Like, I'm not going to go home and make changes really quick because it will be really hard for me to track at what point. But I'm obviously uploading all of the public comment into the record. And then anything that I see, I'm trying to track trends in comments that I hear. So for example, one of the trends of a comment I've heard is the lot size. That's come up. Short-term rentals has come up as an issue.
They have said that 9,000 square foot is
It's
too big.
small. Or it's too big, yes, sorry.
Too big, and it should be a different
And it should
number.
be smaller. And so what I'll do is, last time when I had the survey, I provided all of the public comments in an Excel spreadsheet. And then I will draft some trends that we see. So you could read through all of the comments and then you'll say, okay, this came up more than 5 times, this came up more than 10 times, and I will summarize that for you. So I won't put anything into the draft. I will provide all the comments and then do a summary on each.
But then what? Are you expecting council to say, oh, I like this comment?
Yes, so then after we go to council for feedback, then we will do the changes. So all of the changes will happen at once based on council's feedback.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, and then really quick for the CCNR, do you want me
Yes.
to answer that?
Yeah, please.
So can you move forward? I have like some bonus slides.
Oh, this one?
Yes.
Okay.
There's one more. This comes up a lot. You can put a private restriction on any home for just about anything. A lot of times they can be problematic in nature. The city does not enforce private restrictions like Councilmember Dewar had said. We were working with our building department and legal on, maybe it's a notice on the bottom of your application. The issue we were running into is oftentimes it's not the owner applying for a building permit, it's a contractor. And so how the contractor relays that information to an owner is confusing. And then once we have that on our application, we kind of become more liable in that.
Well, I would like you to work through the issue, and the reason is I know that the people that went to the trouble putting CCNRs in their neighborhood, it's there for a reason. And it's happened in my own development. We have CCNRs and suddenly a structure will be approved that doesn't comply. And we didn't get notice of it as I'm not on our architectural committee, but the architectural committee did not get notice. And therefore, they didn't have an opportunity to discuss with the brand new resident that moved in that wants a accessory dwelling, a storage unit twice as big as allowed in CCNRs. So I think we have to come up with a way that the city can work with all of the different neighborhoods some way. So we need to be able to, with all of the current technology, we need to be able to overcome this issue. And I think it would be a great service to our residents.
Yeah, I'm working on that with legal and building department, see what's legal so far.
Okay. Now to the general. I know.
Madam Chair.
Oh, okay, so a lot of people Dave Titzel for the record. A lot of people brought up, impacts to existing infrastructure like sewer and water and stuff like that. Has there been an analysis done that if we increase the density in in these areas that you would have to increase sewer sizes or water lines and dig up the street? Or because
people are gonna continue to move to Reno, and so the way I look at it, you either live in an already disturbed area, or you go out and you disturb desert habitat, and you have to extend a brand new sewer out there that is more expensive, in my opinion. But has there been any sort of study or anybody looked at, the existing infrastructure and if it would have to be large, made bigger?
Yes, so we are constantly monitoring our sewers and infrastructure in general, to see kind of what needs to be updated. Not my expertise, so I won't speak in depth on that. But as far as accessory dwelling units, there is a little bit more protection than as far as the guest quarters or just additions to homes, because they do have to get their own certificate of occupancy, and then any development does have to get a will serve letter from Tumwa, a sewer will serve letter, and trying to think of another will serve that you might get. And then they also pay their impact fees. So there's regional road impact fees, park impact fees, things that when you make an impact on that infrastructure, you're paying into a fund so that it can be
So the
updated.
owner, whoever's building it on their property, they pay those fees?
Correct, and you would not pay those fees for a guest quarters or an addition because you're not, adding anything.
Thank you.
I didn't know that. Okay, anyone?
I think some areas there's greater impact on infrastructure than others.
I have a question and a comment. I'm wondering, this thing about.
Madam
garage
Chair,
overs-
if you could give
Oh,
your
I'm
name for
sorry,
the
Donna
record.
Keats, for the record. The thing about garage over. The direction to staff at that meeting in July of last year, we can't hear you, I'm sorry,
Never can hear you. She's working on it. Keep going.
The direction to staff from council on the July 31st, 24 meeting. Was specific about the minimum side yard setbacks using the West University neighborhood plan to deal with the step back issue. On
Yes.
garage over things. I don't see anything in here relating to that. And eliminating the provisions for design compatibility.
Yes.
Now, my question is, the design standards for guest quarters, for detached guest quarters. Are far more stringent than the design standard requirements for ADUs. And ADUs actually have people living in them. So I don't get that. I think that would be something to go back to council with. I understand why they did that. But initially, through all this decade, I suppose, that I've been dealing with the ADU issue. It's always been that an ADU is secondary to, it's accessory, and I forget the words. They're very clear though, right? To the principal building. So if you're gonna put the separate building on there, like with guest quarters, the door entrance can't be the same door as the main house. Now we no longer have that for something that's actually a dwelling. So you come around and ask yourself, how is an attached ADU not a duplex, which isn't allowed in single family neighborhoods? Right? So it's kind of there's a little bit of a lack of clarity in how these things are gonna be executed. So the guest quarter standards have a requirement about the front door so that all single family neighborhoods don't begin to look like row houses, right? So if somebody has one in their backyard, you can't see it, who cares really? But then there's that thing about the garage overs, like in your area. I understand that the reason for that at that council meeting was because of the smaller lots in the more central parts of town who would have to go garage over to do an ADU. Well, those are 6,000 square foot lots, so they can't do them anyway. So why aren't we doing something about the setbacks? I mean, my garage is on my rear property line. My neighbor's garage is a living unit on his real property line. If either of us popped up our garages in our single story neighborhood, it would be massively invading, right? And so I think that's something that has to come back in here because the setback thing starts at what, 29 or 24 feet? So it doesn't do any good.
Yes.
Just start at 16 for these things.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay.
I just tried to get a lot out.
That's okay. I had to write it down so I didn't forget. The step back from Wells Avenue,
West University.
Sorry, West University neighborhood plan. The direction from council was to build off of that. We tried to build off of that with the recent code update of the above 24 feet, but you're right, it starts at 16 feet, but we don't have that 0-foot setback anymore. That could be added in as far as the step back going down to 16 feet. I would like to reword it though, because the West University one is very confusing and I don't think it has been applied consistently, but the design requirements removed by the direction of council. We had the guest quarters design requirements. Sorry, it was not you, Councilmember Duper.
I know what I voted for then, and I did not vote for.
We did not vote for that, but the design requirements removed. You're correct. Originally, staff said, let's use the guest quarters design requirements to help us, so that they are more consistent. The direction was to remove them at that point. I still have them, you know, in there as far as what can we have, and that's, yes, here's something that we could provide that would alleviate the issue for the doors, the duplexes, the row housing, et cetera. And then as far as the attached AD door, that would be handled in those design requirements as well.
And
That are in the guest.
last question,
What was it?
I don't remember, I talked too fast and.
I think a
I'll get back to you
lot of it was
that,
on the
but-
design requirements.
Yeah,
for
about
guest
the
quarters.
design requirements, but the AD, the accessory structure. drive
Over
door
garage.
Doesn't have, you know, the over garage, but doesn't have rear and side setbacks in it.
Yes,
So what are you using for those?
so the accessory structure standards
There isn't a side setback and a rear setback listed in those tables.
for accessory structures,
don't
it's
think
in
so.
it's in the primary zoning.
In the
There's
pri-
two.
Right, so we're going back to primary zoning for that?
No, so in the primary zoning tables, the dimensional standards, they'll be like SF3, it'll say, here's your setback for the principal structure, and then there's
Onto
a
the
second side
accessory
of that table that says for accessory structures.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
I have one more question. The people that have already spoken in public comment, and then the NAB members that have spoken, and then the people that have yet to speak.
Yes,
I know you were taking notes, but you weren't taking notes right now because you're speaking.
yes.
What do you need for the people? Should they send in a separate comment to you to help you capture these?
That's great.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ways to do that. There is a link to a form, like a public comment form. I get all of those, so you can do that. You can send me an email. Anything in written form is best, so that it's easier for me to transcribe it to a spreadsheet or something like that, so council can just look at all of them. If you call me and give public comment, I'll write it down, but. it's not
Less
as best.
preferred.
Correct.
Got one more question.
Yes.
Roman Chalmers for the record, could you describe or explain what the genesis of this ordinance, if there's any particular problems it is attempting to solve, or
Sure.
the history of why it's coming back up?
Yes, where do I start? Well, in 2018, there was an ordinance that was brought forward. This is the most recent ADU whack-a-mole situation. In 2018, there was an ordinance that was brought to council, and they said there was a lot of opposition. I'm sure many of you came to that meeting and spoke in opposition, and council said it's not ready yet. We would like to see ADUs, but this is not the way we would like to see them. In 2022, I believe, city council had Shane Phillips come, a housing expert, come to city council and provide his recommendations based on the affordable housing crisis, not only in Reno, but all over the country. And he gave recommendations, one of them being ADUs. They might be able to kind of help alleviate some of this affordability. In that same meeting, council initiated a text amendment to allow ADUs in the city of Reno. So since 2022, we have been doing public outreach to get feedback on what people would like to see in that ordinance. I think I got that timeline right.
Pretty good.
Okay.
I mean, it also started in 2015, 2016 timeframe, before the 2018. I think that's what led to the 2018.
Okay.
So if the.
But council basically directed her to do this in
Right.
2022.
So if affordable housing is a problem that it hopes to solve, barring them from being rentals, that kind of sounds like a
Yes.
so-so solution to the.
So that is just for guest quarters. So in this proposed draft, they would be allowed to be rented out. The discussion is short term. Should they be allowed to be rented short term, like on Airbnb? I think everyone can agree that would not help affordability. So do we want to place restrictions on how long of a lease they have?
Sorry,
Madam Chair, Sean McCoy, thank you. Grace, thank you for your time and presentation tonight. Just my personal experience with guest quarter violations has been enforcement was really ineffective. Really wasn't any enforcement against the violations in my neighborhood. How do you see ADUs, if they are approved, violations that might not meet with some of these guidelines being enforced?
Based on this proposed draft, we tried to draft it on things that can be enforceable. So on the built environment, if you come in for a building permit and you say you're gonna build it to be 12 feet tall, and our inspector shows up and it's 20 feet tall, that's a blatant violation, so we would not issue a C of O at that point. Think when we start getting into the weeds about who you can rent it to, how many people you can rent it to, that was not in this ordinance for the reason of enforceability being difficult. You know, that's just kind of why we drafted it the way we did as far as the enforceability of some of these regulations. That helped.
I do have a suggestion, Donna Keats for record. Why not, say that if you're renting a second unit, an accessory unit on your property, it has to be for more than 28 days. And then code enforcement has something to work with. If there's a stream of people coming in and the neighbors are getting bothered about it and they want to call code enforcement, they can document all the different cars who are parked there and stuff. They can take photos of it and code enforcement has something to work with. To stop the conversion to short-term rentals.
That is a tool that some other jurisdictions use, so it's an option.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I was gonna recommend we, just given the time that we open it up. Yeah.
Speak to those of us.
Yeah, that's what I just.
Yes, so we're gonna take public comment from anybody in the audience and.
That'll be sometime.
Don't know everybody's saying.
I didn't want to write it, so sorry.
Do you want, is this public comment again? Thank you for it, yes.
This won't be very long, and some of it, excuse me, some of it might be repetitious. First of all,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, if, once you're done providing your public comment, if you could fill out a form.
I did give you one.
You did?
Yeah, gave you, my name is on there, Carmen Gage, Carmen Gage. Okay,
Thank you.
anyhow, I live in a single family neighborhood, not for the past, more than 25 years, we've been fighting these ADUs. This gentleman here mentioned that he would not like it in his historical neighborhood. And that there were CNRs outside in other areas. And when Naomi asked him what he thought about other areas, he thought it would be okay for them to have that neighborhood, to have the ADUs. Anyhow, that would be, means that the McCarran Loop, and that which was what most of the rest of us are in, that this whole McCarran Loop is already high density. And I don't think that's fair that you should just say that it's okay for some areas, but not others. Also, I'm concerned, just as the gentleman earlier spoke, as far as Airbnbs, as far as short-term rentals, how are those regulations going to be enforced? I don't understand. It's just not right that it's okay for the city to tell us how tall or how wide it's going to be, but they're not going to tell us or be able to make certain that whatever the restrictions are for those for these ADUs are being followed. That's just not right. And it just will ruin the neighborhood, no matter which one you're in. Thank you for your time.
And let me ask a quick question. In your neighborhood, Country Club Acres, right?
Yes.
Aren't they forbidden in your CCNRs?
No.
We don't have CCNRs. They are forbidden in our neighborhood plan.
In the plan. Okay, thank you.
Do you have a list? Are you doing?
I do. Bradley Carlson?
For the record, Bradley Carlson. Some things that came to mind is listening to what's going on here that hadn't occurred to me before. I was recently in a presentation meeting with the county on this topic. And the county really, I mean, there's really a push to facilitate this and make it happen fast. And some of the things that came up in the discussion that I haven't heard that maybe you just might want to keep in mind that it might pop up as something unexpected. But there was discussions of, should the county have, they didn't use the words plan book, but should they have pre-approved plans that an owner could just go and pull a plan out and would be site adapted by a team? There was discussion that, you know, there might be builder, architect or builder teams that would go out there and have pre-approved plans that could just go put these down. There was some discussion, as to whether or not it would include prefab or manufactured or modular units that could be plopped down. Talking about Airbnbs and the hotel concept and so forth, makes me think that there might be an opportunity for a developer out there to come up with a modular unit and contact individual owners, you know, and say, I'll go into partnership with you and we're gonna put 6 of these in your neighborhood. You know,
And are you supporting these things? you're mentioning,
no,
or
I'm not.
opposed?
I'm not. These are just things that kind of concern me. When I was hearing them, it's sort of like almost worst case scenarios of what might happen. I don't think these are necessarily good ideas. There was you might remember there was 5 years ago or something, there was a modular housing unit that was put down in front of the Believe sign. That's, that a private company, I guess, was invited to put that there. It was an impressive unit. It could be stacked or it could be put or it could be freestanding. What if somebody came along and wanted to put these in a neighborhood? And we've already talked, you know, it's already been mentioned, the design guide standards, and how far that should or shouldn't go. But that's pretty much it. It's just kind of some things that
You
kind of,
want these things addressed? Is that what a way to say it?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that'd be a way, yeah. I think that it's just things that we're not. You know,
and you're
we're-
not necessarily, you're not supportive of them.
I'm not supportive of them. These are sort of things that could
You
go
said
down,
concern.
concerned, or
Okay.
could go down a rabbit hole the wrong way if it's not,
Okay.
if it's not a control put on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Powers?
Okay, let me sit down. My name is Alicia Pars. Alicia. So we heard a lot of concern this evening. I'm actually speaking on behalf of being for the idea of approving accessory dwelling units for our town. And I'm gonna start with this article I read recently in the Atlantic, and I'll tell you what the title of that article is after I give you some information that was in it. First of all, in the 19th century, 1 in 3 Americans moved in any given year. In the 1960s, about 1 in every 5 moved in any given year. And in 2023, only 1 in 13 Americans moved in any given year. Since our country was built on mobility, mobility fostered entrepreneurship, innovation, growth, and social equality. Being able to move is a big part of how our nation became what it is. The sharp decline in geographic mobility is the single most important social change of the past century. From 1985 to 2014, the share of people who became entrepreneurs fell by half. And this information is all connected. We live in a desirable region, a university, we have industry, we have tech, we have recreation, and a lot of really fantastic people want to live here. They're going to drive innovation. They're going to drive entrepreneurship. They drive the money that we all enjoy, you know, having in our community. So that Atlantic article, for you guys who would like to read it, is called How the Progressives Froze the American Dream. And I live here, my neighbors are here. I actually own 2 properties and I care very much about our communities and what our neighborhoods are like. And yet I do support the idea that we can welcome people, we can welcome new neighbors. Out of all the concerns I heard tonight, the one that I'd like to put my 2 cents in about is the concern about Airbnb use. Nobody wants that in their neighborhood. I used to live in Tawadana and Truckee, and people would rent out homes. I had strangers peering in my windows. It was horrible, new people every week. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I just would want to know how the city is going to address that. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Johnson?
I'll stand and I think everybody can probably hear me. So Mark Johnson, for the record, I'm here with 2 things. One, I'm one of those architects that talks about doing things fancy and wants to design around that. And we're actually in favor of the language that's been put into this. with respect to compatibility. Compatibility is a very broad term, with respect to how it can be done. I like the idea of the height of the, height restrictions of the existing house. But the compatibility is something that we can work with that is much more restrictive than people would think, and I think that it's a good thing. But in all, the architectural community has been working with the city to kind of understand these requirements. We're supportive of them. We understand, not from a overall housing situation. There's a lot of comments that have been made about not being affordable. We get that, but there's also a lot of other housing situations that this would solve. I have aging parents. It'd be nice if they could live closer to me instead of staying in their own house, which is a ways away from me. So there's a lot of other options that are there as well. The second reason I want to be here is that I was also on the planning commission the last time this came through. And when this came through the first time, the restrictions that it was talked about, Newlands was not included, but everywhere else was. And there was no public input. It was brought to the planning commission, said, what do you guys think about this? We're gonna change all of this. And at the time, the comment was, this hasn't been vetted. Like, you're basically changing the zoning for every parcel in the city with no public comment. So we said, no, we can't approve this. We pass it on to the council with that very statement. And I think that was one of the reasons why council said, you're right. We need feedback. We can't just come in and say, we're gonna blanket, let this happen. And so now coming to all of these, I'm not on the planning commission anymore. Sitting in this meeting, I'm glad I'm not on the planning commission anymore because I have been yelled at a lot for the 8 years. But I think this is the right approach. I think, as Grace says, she's collecting feedback. She's gonna put together a whole spreadsheet that goes to the council. I've seen those spreadsheets. We did it for the master plan. We did it for Title 18. It's a great opportunity to go through and get feedback on very specific items. So the questions of size, questions of compatibility, the questions of rentals, all of those things are going to be heard and put into the list. So again, as a former planning commissioner, seeing the process being exactly what we wanted it to be the 5 or 6 years ago that we asked for it, hearing the feedback, I get that there's a lot of opposition to this for certain areas. I think one of the things that was brought up at the very beginning, somebody mentioned how expensive these things are. This is not something that you're going to build on a whim. Look around at the neighbors that you live with. How many of them have $500,000 in their pocket that they can use to build one of these if their lot would let them? So I don't think this is going to change everything, but I am definitely glad of the process that's going on. So thank you.
Thank you. Dave Barrett, followed by Karen Barrett.
Yeah, we could be a team.
Yeah.
Good evening. Dave Barrett here and my wife Karen Barrett. Yeah. We're here to speak in favor of the accessory dwelling units, and it's because we have firsthand experience. We owned a property that in 2004, we pulled a city of Reno permit under the accessory dwelling unit approval at that time. We built the secondary unit on this primary single family home, and it has been an amazing benefit. It provided housing for my parents who, as they aged and needed basically, I would say, assistance, they lived in the accessory dwelling unit. It also provided housing for our sons who are both now professionally educated through the university, but at that time for them to be able to have an affordable place to live, or we were able to provide that for them. It was an amazing advantage. The accessory dwelling unit proposal, and Grace, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation of that, does require one off-street parking place for the accessory dwelling unit, which is going to significantly reduce the impact of people say, like the parking on the streets and things like that. And my answer to that, or my comment to that, would be that if you're living in the historic neighborhoods that were built primarily with single car garages and one parking space, and you own 2 cars or 3 cars, you're just adding to the problem just as much as about an accessory dwelling unit where they're with even less impact by the accessory dwelling unit, because it does require an off-street parking space. I think it's a tremendous thing, and in these days of entry-level housing in our, what we'll call neighborhood, or what this NAB represents, is it's asinine. You know, to think that these houses that, you know, Darren and I live in our house that we've been in since 1992, and now we have houses selling in our neighborhood for $900,000, almost $1 million, unattainable for young families, that even though it's a pair of college-educated professionals, to think, oh, we're trying to float a loan to buy a what I'll call, you know, a nice neighborhood entry-level house, and we've got to finance $900,000. It's unattainable.
Yeah, and going back in the day, it was called granny flat. At that time, it wasn't an ADU. And when Dave spoke about his parents, that's where I am really passionate about that. His parents used to be full-time RVers. His dad ended up with Parkinson's. So that ADU actually is set up, it was set up with ramps, wheelchair ramps, roll under sink, roll in shower. And that's why that was built, was for his dad. So he could then live his life out there, which he did. And then, like you said, his mom, I'm hoping maybe someday my stubborn 94-year-old mother, she lives on her own independently in her own home, but when that time comes, I'm hoping we can put her into that ADU. So I see a very strong purpose for those. Not every neighborhood is the same. I understand CCNRs, no, you have CCRs or HOAs that they don't require it or allow it, then don't have it done. But there are neighborhoods where these can fit in. You don't even know it's there. It is nicely designed. And I think it's wonderful. And I hope we can get some ADUs put in. And especially when you do have aging parents, younger kids who can't afford our housing costs that are here. And if you're concerned with water or sewer or those other things that came up, I'm more concerned with apartment units with 2,000 apartments in them. Talk about water drain, electricity drain, sewer drain. That concerns me more than a single shower, single toilet in a smaller ADU building. So I'm in favor of ADUs with guidelines. I agree there needs to be guidelines, but I'm for that.
And I do think, I realize we talked about it, and I don't know, the 9,000 square foot lot size is not, is that part of the proposed ordinance now?
Yes.
If it is, I think that's great then as well too, because again, that would almost exclude all of the historic neighborhood, the Nixon neighborhood and things like that. You guys are not on 9,000 square foot lots there. Second is, there's all this reference of, oh, why should we even approve these? Because there's so many places that have codes, covenants, and restrictions that might not allow them. Doesn't matter. If you live in a neighborhood that has code covenants and restrictions that say we don't allow accessory dwelling units or secondary units on your property, you don't even have to worry about it. It's not going to be in your neighborhood. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Beth Dory?
Go for it.
Beth Dory. First of all, I think everybody should be aware that there is a bill called AB 131. Jovan Jackson from Las Vegas submitted it.
Speak a little louder, please.
Okay.
Maybe, oh, yeah.
Jovan Jackson submitted it. He's from Las Vegas, and it's about prohibiting or how do I phrase this? That you cannot prohibit an ADU in a historic neighborhood. So basically, Newlands could not be sectioned off. And the way that they describe a historic neighborhood is any home 50 years or older. So if you're living in a home 50 years or older, you're considered a historic neighborhood. And this proposed legislation, I think, will prohibit any CCNRs. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but you should be looking at AB 131. The other thing that I had a concern about is that we can talk all we want, but there's administrative decisions that can override setbacks or whatever. The other thing is that it's my understanding that after all of this public outreach, the council can and may do whatever they want. This could include reducing the lot size from 9,000 to 6,000. Eliminate the parking requirement, reduce the setbacks, no boundary survey requirement and reducing the building coverage that staff has recommended. If the council does go rogue disregarding the staff and the public suggestion about upzoning, then we can all assume that this ADU ordinance was a done deal months ago. And my CCNRs prohibit guest houses. So, I mean, I could, but I'd have an injunction probably from the neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Bankson? Oh, there we go.
Hi, my name is Sandy Bingston, and I have a lot of the concerns that have been talked about tonight, so I won't go through all of them. Traffic, parking, infrastructure, compatibility, safety, rental and short-term units. And I wanted just to spend a minute on the affordable. I'm wondering, what does it cost to build, say, a 750 or 1,000 square foot ADU by the time you have the permits, the construction, and then to have the insurance every year and the property taxes? What does it cost? The architect, I hope he laughed, but he mentioned something like $500,000. I don't know that that would build 1,000 square foot unit. But in order for me to build and pay that money, it's not going to be affordable housing, no way. Because I'm gonna have to recover all my costs. And I don't know how you would do that and make it affordable unless you're very generous, and I'm not. The other thing, the people that was just up here, they talked about their parents and sons, and I think that has some real benefit, but those are not rental units. They're family units. And I do have a rental property, and I have to fill out a form every year that says how many bedrooms, what do I rent it for? These are not rental units, they're like family units. And when I was renting, or I'm hoping they don't charge me now on rent, but maybe they do, I don't know. But when I had my mom in condo, I was not charging her rent. It was not a rental unit. And I listed that on this paper that I got I can't remember if it came from the assessor's office or the recorder's office. One of you might know. Anyway, when you talk about affordability, I think you have to be really, really careful in the definition. My last thing is, when you were talking about the CCNRs, my home, it's up in the Skyline Heights. It prohibits a second unit. Now, what I wasn't really clear about is if my neighbor or 3 doors down, unbeknownst to me, they want to put in an ADU and it's prohibited in our CNRs, how do I know about that? I need to know. And I don't know, every 2 weeks, I think I get a list of development projects from the county or the city. I think it comes from the city. Can't we list every week so I know where the ADUs are and what their addresses are? Because it's not fair to me to have other people in my neighborhood.
I just want to address one of those things. Usually what these would require is a building permit versus a discretionary permit that changes zoning, for example. And this has been a debate the 10 years I've been on council, which is that currently the city does not post notice of when building permits are filed. And so it's incredibly difficult to know. I have advocated for 10 years that they should have a separate website and just list them quickly when they come in, list them, and that's it. They don't have to do anything more. So I think that's a good comment, and I think, others may feel the same, so.
And if they don't list them, can they at least check when they get the thing and then go to the?
That's what we were talking about earlier and that's why I brought up about the CCNRs is, can they at least do a check and say you can or can't in the zone?
Otherwise I have to drive around all the time.
I get it.
Pat Jackson?
Hi, I'm Pat Jackson for the record. I'd like to thank the city for posting on Instagram about this meeting. It's the first one I've been to. That's how I found out about it. I'm a resident of Ward 2. Did the math in the back. My lot is 17,500 square feet, so I could, in theory, build an ADU if this passed. And I support the concept, but I don't personally want one, and I'm gonna share some thoughts that I believe the only constant is change. My number one concern about Reno is affordable housing, and I want to over communicate that I don't think that that's the same as low income housing. And instead, I'm really concerned about obtainable housing for working young professionals. I don't know that the numbers will work out in every situation, but back of a card math, at a 7% interest rate, and a rental ADU that generates $1,500 a month, that would generate another $225,000 in buying power on a conventional mortgage. And Reno's home price, median home price, as of the last time I Googled it in the back, is $559,000. I moved here and started my family in 2014. At the time I lived in Ward 5. We bought our home then for $183,000, and that's obviously not even remotely close to a possibility today. But I'm really concerned about dynamic demographics of first-time home buyers being able to live inside Reno. I also would echo some of the comments on dynamic housing opportunities, multi-generational living. I would say that that cuts both ways. Maybe there's a kid that quite hasn't had their plate broken and needs to live in the back, but also, and I apologize, I didn't retain the number when I heard this, but there's a growing number of empty nesters that have a large home, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, don't need it. We can't afford to downsize because of the interest rate they acquired sometime from 2018 to 2022. So allowing ADUs would also allow folks to actually downsize on their own property and do something with the home that they currently live in. And then it would probably not be used very often, but this would be able to be a home office for home office production, allowing homeowners to more multifaceted use their own dwelling. And then sustainable urban growth. It's not my profession or expertise, but I would believe that our existing roads and other infrastructures could withstand some level of growth until they break. I'm glad to hear that the expense would be put on the people building these, at least to a degree. And then I also think it would make our community more dynamic. I think that allowing folks that have first-time jobs, lower income jobs to live within inside Reno proper makes Reno a more fascinating and interesting place. And then some final thoughts. I recently, out of interest to this meeting, called another post I saw on Instagram for somebody that builds ADUs potentially in Reno. They threw out the number of $250 to $350 a square foot. I don't know if that was fake news, but that's what I heard. And then I'm a wildlife biologist by day and interest in sociology. And this is really directed towards our neighborhood advisory board. The folks that came in this room to talk in any part to a sociologist are known as the issue public. We care enough to step outside, our normal day to come and talk this dinner with my family to do this. I called the city today and learned that there was a survey in 2023 where 2,000 Reno residents were surveyed on their thoughts on this. And I haven't seen the results of the survey, but apparently that was overwhelmingly support. So yeah, I hope that that's included in this discussion.
Thank you. Terry Iconis?
After the presentation,
Oh, this is for Tara. Thank you. And Molly M?
So having heard a little bit more from, speak up, please. Oh, sure. Sorry. Molly Manukian, I just wanted to respond and add a few additional details to some of the questions and comments that were just made. And I appreciate your additional time on this. But it's important to me because there are a lot of ideas that are being suggested. And one of them is, seniors aging in place or bringing your seniors to your home and having them live in an ADU. Your seniors can live with you right now under your own roof. They can live in a bedroom that you no doubt have available for your senior. Or you can create an addition to your home and put your senior there. It doesn't have to be an ADU. It doesn't have to create a situation where builders capitalize on this particular ordinance in order to line their pockets. And that's what's going to happen. The architect that was here is spot on. These are very expensive units to build. They will be built by developers and real estate investors. The average homeowner is not going to be able to do this. And so I want to just be really clear about that. There are other ways to bring your seniors or your college students home to live with you in an affordable way. And it doesn't have to be an ADU. With respect to whether an ADU is behind a house and no one can see it, so who cares? Well, a lot of people care. And realize that sometimes when an ADU is built in a backyard, it actually blocks the sunlight to the adjoining lot completely. So that somebody who bought a house, put their life savings into a house, can no longer enjoy their backyard because somebody built adjacent to it when they had no expectation that they were going to live anywhere but a single family dwelling. And now all of a sudden it's essentially a duplex. So people do care. And the idea that you don't create standards, you don't create specificity in your ordinance because it's too difficult to enforce is complete nonsense. That is just a foolish approach to development. To just say it's going to be difficult for us to enforce it, so we're not going to put it in an ordinance is bananas. And a perfect example of that is the parking issue with this. They're saying that if you build an ADU, you have to have one on-property parking spot. But the problem with that is it cannot be enforced because you can just play musical chairs with your cars. There would be no way to do that. And to think that somebody's going to build a $500,000 ADU or even a $300,000 ADU and only one person is going to live in it is also a fallacy. These will be multi-bedroom, multi-bath structures. They will be the equivalent of a duplex. And you can put a 1,200 square foot ADU behind your home in most of these cases. So please, take care with this ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe we have one public comment via Zoom.
May I speak to Rosalind Zimmerman? I said no, but I'd like to.
Can you fill out a form?
I did.
You did?
Rosalind Zimmerman.
Did you speak earlier?
No. May I?
Oh, gotcha. Yes, I remember now.
Okay, so I can now you have the Zoom.
Oh, it's okay.
I wasn't going to speak. I don't like this either. I'm Rosalind Zimmerman, and I'm at 2 Newland Circle.
Rosalind, are you able to stand? There's
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you please be quiet in the back? We can't hear her. Thank you
I'm
so much.
sorry, I have trouble standing lately. But I'm Rosalind Zimmerman and I live Newland Circle. My children live next door. It's not that I'm trying to make Newlands a cutout. I was a realtor for 30 years. Plus, my son is still a realtor. The one thing that I don't think has been brought up is that probably the 2,000 or plus people who say yes to an ADU want the ADU. I'm telling you as a realtor that when people moved in and bought a single family house, they are not going to be happy when they wake up after 35 years of living in their house. So all of a sudden see construction going on next door. When my zoning, my house is on 12,000 square feet. My house is 4,000 square feet. So if you're allowing to put an ADU on my property, if I sold it and my kids live next door, somebody could put a pretty big dwelling on that property and the kids live next door. As a realtor, my son is now going to have to say, with all the other caveats, if people want to buy a single family, he's going to have to say to them, what are to the new buyers, what is the square footage of the lot surrounding? Because if they're all single family, but it's over or 9,000, if they keep it at 9,000, then it's 9,000 or bigger, there's a chance they're going to have a multifamily living next to them in a single family neighborhood. And they're going to wake up one day to a bulldozer. And I will tell you, my sewer backs up all the time. My house is 100 years old and I love my house. I love my neighborhood. I don't want to be a NIMBY, but I am telling you, when I try to pull out of my driveway in the morning or at night, it takes me forever. Nobody lets me in pulling out on St. Lawrence. they're on there, they have a mission and they're going. And when you try to pull out from Newland Circle onto California, take your Danish with you because you're never gonna get out. And so I'm just trying to tell you, I don't wanna be one of those people that says not in my neighborhood. But I will tell you that when you sell a house and it's a single family dwelling, it should stay a single family dwelling. And you should not wake up one day to a multifamily when you thought you were living next to, you know, a single family. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me see if he still wants to provide public comment. Ian, do you still want to speak? We have no additional public comment, Madam Chair.
Sure, I'll speak.
Thank you, Ian.
What was the bill again that was passed? AB 131?
It's
not passed.
It's not passed.
It's not proposed.
Thank you.
Did you get that? It did not pass, Ian, not yet.
Okay, so I felt like two bills with that number. So the one we were discussing was affecting housing.
I think it was AB 131 was it's a proposed legislation to prohibit prohibitions on ADUs in historic neighborhoods.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Any other public comment? On this topic?
I just like to make a clarification. An addendum to my talk before. The woman back over
Could you tell
here.
us your name, please? State your name.
Oh, I'm Tom Tate. I had talked earlier. I live in Newlands Manor. The woman had suggested before that I was not opposed to ADUs outside of historical districts. And just for a correction, that's not correct. I'm not in favor of ADUs anywhere. And when Naomi asked me about it, I said, well, maybe a large lot residential, 2.5 acres. Yeah, okay. But I think it's because there's several problems with it. If you have you could probably have a development where you had ADUs as part of the development. But if you try to retrofit it into an existing thing, you wind up with one large house, one small house, and you have now shared private space. There's no private space for each residence. And as Roz pointed out, people who move into single family zone areas expect to live in a single family house.
Thank you. All right, that ask you one thing? No, okay.
Just one thing real quick, short and cross. On the ADUs with all these,
Can't hear you.
Linda Cross, the ADUs with all these restrictions and everything. I was trying to put just what I call a lean-to shed. I bought that just like this and it opens out. And the Reno Municipal Code is so screwed up that there is no place in my whole yard that I can put that. It has to be at least 2 feet from the fence. It has to be 5, it can't be up against the house. Now I see things all over the place. They're up against the house, up against the fence and everywhere. And nobody cares unless you have a neighbor like I do who calls and complains about me all the time. And then the Reno Direct Gestapo will come out and send you letters and threaten you with fines, but other than that, nobody cares. And in any event, I just wanted to make that point because with all the restrictions there are just for a stupid little shed that's not even gonna be seen by anybody. And then you're talking about these that you're gonna allow to put a whole nother unit in. I go with that real estate agent, it's just gonna ruin your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will close this discussion item.
She asked me so.
It's with one comment that an ADU is not a tool shed. So we should think about having some regulations for living space instead of tools. We're gonna move on to the development projects. And we changed the order of the agenda, so we're gonna start with the Arlington Office Master Plan Amendment. Are you guys ready to roll here? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Yvette Durant. This is my husband, Jeff Bender.
My family has owned a parcel on Arlington, near Arlington and Plum, for a little over 50 years. It's never been developed. And we are requesting a change of zoning from single family residential 5, which is 5 homes per acre. This is a third of an acre, approximately, to professional office. This lot is adjacent to dentist office, directly to the south. There is a residence directly to the north. Arlington Corners, which is a very large commercial development, multi-office, is across the street. And then if you go one more lot to the corner of Arlington and Plum to the south, there's it's a 2-story office building, multiple tenant. And then of course, across that, from that corner is Plum Gate. So we are very close to a lot of commercial. This is the neighborhood I grew up in. My father was a Ward 2 city councilman long ago in the 70s, and my family bought their first house on Glen Manor Drive in 1969 when I was 4 years old, and I still have that house. I lived in 3 different houses, all within about a quarter mile of each other, and all within about a quarter mile of this Arlington property. My father built a house, and that's the house that we actually use now, we're in Reno, and I went to UNR. So I just want you all to have an understanding of, you know, this is my neighborhood, as much as yours. So we are just, that's what we're looking to do. We're happy to answer any questions. We don't want to take up a lot of time because I know you have a deadline and you have another item.
It's okay. Why don't you show us, they pulled up the map and you said it's on the corner of Arlington and.
Let me get oriented.
Well, here.
Yes, it's out right there, that parcel.
Okay. So just go a little scroll south a little.
Whoops, I just need to share my screen. 1 second.
What was there before?
It's never had anything.
Dirt.
Dirt has been there, dirt is still there.
Okay, can you just?
Yeah, my dad bought it in the early or mid 70s.
Okay, so.
All right, so this is it.
She's just showing
the
Plum
demo
down
office.
there in Arlington.
Yeah.
Just to orient people, could you point out
So-
Plum?
Plum is right here.
Right?
So
And
this is a fairly good size commercial building, dental office. Used to be the Francis. I don't know if you remember the Francis when they were working there, brothers. This is the parcel. This is Arlington Corners, and then Plum Gate would be right here. Stonehouse right there.
And what did you want to put there? An office building?
Professional office, yeah, that's kind of what we've always wanted to do. My husband is a mechanical engineer, has 3 employees, so we'd like to have an office for him, and then we would probably have another co-tenant.
And what size?
We really don't know. Right now, we have a site plan, 2-story, about 6,000 square feet.
So you're looking for a zone change? Is that what you're looking for?
Correct, yeah, master plan amendment.
Okay.
To allow us to do the zone change. Okay, right, it's 2 things.
Okay.
So is that dirt lot an eyesore?
Is it an eyesore? Well, I mean, we do clear it.
What you say?
We-
Betterment of the community.
We clear it every year and we try to be good neighbors, but I'm gonna tell you that of late, there's been, homeless people on it. I think that, developing it would be a good thing for the neighborhood. I think it would help the, other commercial properties around, like in Plum Gate. I think it would be an improvement.
Good job.
So, and I will say, I just want to. So we have been building and remodeling a lot of properties over the years. And I just want to give a shout out to
the city of Reno because it's a very welcoming place for folks, especially Jeff has been a huge help. Planning's attitude about let me help you, let me give you information, and they're just not obstructionists. So I just want to say thank you.
Stan?
Stand outing for the record. What kind of zoning would you need for it? Because there's already that dental office and there's that other building that is, I don't know, it's medical spa, I don't
This
know.
one right here,
In
yeah.
there.
I'm not really sure.
It's currently zoned for single family, specifically single family 5. And so we're wanting
Isn't
to
that
change
close
it
to
to,
the.
correct. So we'd like to change it to professional office as all the other adjacent southern properties are, and to the west
Well,
as well.
I don't see why that would be a problem.
Okay, Sean McCoy, for the record, have you spoken to any of the residential residents surrounding the property that theoretically would be impacted by commercial building?
Yeah, so, directly to the north, Linda has spoken with Jeff, and Jeff included us on an email today. She said she has no issues. Her only concern is that the dental office, the new, well, I don't know how new he is, but several years ago, the new dentist there apparently has all of his employees park on the street. And so they park up Arlington in front of her house. She has issues getting in and out and being able to see traffic from her driveway. So she was concerned and wanted to make sure that we wouldn't be doing that. And I told her that, you know, we share her concerns and we would certainly never be, you know, us telling our employees to park on the street. Unless it was, you know, of course, directly in front of us.
Yeah, because that has been vacant for a long time. I drive by it every day.
Yes, it has.
Forever.
And then, the folks who, this property is Mark still here, Mark is here, and Lori showed up at our other meeting we held. And their concerns, and I don't want to speak for you, Mark, but, their concerns related to their lot is kind of sunken lower than ours. So they are worried about, folks, you know, if we have windows, folks looking into their backyard or having light trespass the property. We don't have any intention of having light trespass the property or having lights on, you know, 24 hours or anything like that. And I think they also were worried that there was gonna be kind of late night activity and, you know, we're looking at professional office, kind of standard business hours and things. But in terms of windows at the back, you know, because of our parking, we have to have enough parking. So we really, it's not like we can develop a horizontal structure and have enough parking because of the topography is sloping. And, you know, if we were to build a house, we would have a horizontal structure that would have all the windows at the back. So this would be kind of, you know, we're only doing about half. If we put an ADU, no.
Colin, do you want to see if there's?
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have a comment? Oh, okay, I do. Or have a question. So in professional office, your building height can be 35 feet. I understand.
I think it's 25 and then if you, well, Jeff will, it's 25 and then, yeah, it can be 35, but in this district, there's an overlay, so it's 25 and then if
So
you want to
you're in
go higher.
Plymouth neighborhood, the Plymouth residential plan?
There's an overlay, and it's either Plum or something overlay district.
Okay, right, so
that
you're
we have
limited,
to-
that's what I was wondering, because we had another project come up anyway, you are acknowledging the planning area overlay.
Yes.
Limiting it to 25 feet.
And it's 25 and there's, if you want to ask for an exemption to go a certain percentage or something, minor deviation, you can do that, but it is not 35 cut and dry.
Because of the, I think it's the Plymouth neighborhood plan that crosses over there, so,
It's the Plymouth neighborhood.
Yeah.
overlay. And that's,
Right.
that's written in the description, as
Okay.
noticed.
okay. I didn't realize that, okay, so that's great. And then you will have in the PO, you have a landscaping, visual screening requirement, right?
Yep.
To help protect your neighbors behind you.
Well, we have a landscape requirement of 20%, so we have to have landscaping no matter what, and in terms of. You know, I just want to be clear, we're asking for the zoning change, but we don't have plans.
No, I
We-
understand
We
that.
don't, so anything that we want to build has to still go through the whole approval process, public comment, planning, all of that.
And then I guess my question's more for Jeff. Since it's a non-residential next to residential, isn't there a privacy
Correct,
protection?
so if and when they get the zoning approved and a master plan amendment to allow the zoning to be approved, they would have to subsequently come through with a minor site plan review entitlement application to allow non-residential adjacent to residential zoning.
Right.
Yes, so there would be a further development
More thing,
review
when that
opportunity.
goes to public, and then doesn't that also have some privacy protection standards? Screening
Absolutely,
standards
yeah,
and
absolutely.
whatnot
All
for
of
the
that would be
neighbors?
vetted at that time. When I did the review for this project for the zone change, I made them aware of all of the standards that they would have to comply with down the road
Okay.
anyway. So they're already kind of aware of the height limitations and the setbacks and the landscaping and all of that. So they won't be caught unaware when they come forward with that further application.
And I'll also just say, in terms of Linda's house up here, it's hard to see on this, but you can kind of see, there are very large, heavily treed, there's a buffer right there. And then at Mark's house in the back, there's some trees, there's a 6-foot fence, but you know, we would be putting stuff back there as well.
As far as process, to actually, they would have to do a tentative map or no?
No, just a minor site plan review.
Not even a minor CUP,
No, it's a site plan review.
would just go to staff,
Which is the same as a minor CUP, would just be a staff level 30-day review.
right, so I just wanna be clear, that won't come to the NAB. That won't go to the planning commission, that will be reviewed by staff.
It'll be reviewed by staff, but it would be publicly noticed.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, but it would be done at a 30-day level, a 30-day staff review.
right,
Right. The only potential for something different than that would be if they wanted to seek a major deviation to allow a taller building. That would be another full public process.
Okay. All right,
so at this point, for our newer members, you would write down some comments to submit to the planning commission. So they know what you're thinking about this project. And we have a process where you can also submit those electronically. Instead of writing them right here, right now, you could do it overnight, but usually there's a very short turnaround time between our NAB and when the planning commission comes. So you pretty much have to get it in within 24 hours to be counted. It's not a mandatory, but it's one of the reasons you're on here is to provide this kind of input into the process. It would be, in this case, submitted to the planning commission because this review will go to the planning commission and council because the master plan changed. But the house would not, or I'm sorry, the structure would not. So just being clear about what your role is here during this development project.
And I would just add to that, that the staff report is due tomorrow for this to go to planning commission on March 4th. So if you want to provide any feedback, whether it's positive or negative, and you don't just have to submit negative comments, you can submit positive and support as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Submit that by tomorrow so that it can be included in the draft staff report, please.
okay, 9 AM, you mean? All right. Let's see. All right, with that, then, if no one has any additional questions or comments, then we'll move on
Thank
to.
you. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item C2, the Rancho PUD handbook.
You have to.
Yes, so we got the time extended till 9 to ensure we had enough time. We'll try to end by 10 or 5 or 9 to give the staff time to put the room back. Okay?
Good evening, Andy Durling for the record, Woodward Rogers representing the applicant for the Rancher development. I'm up here shortly.
So this is, next slide. This is a master plan amendment and, plan unit development or PUD amendment, for the Ranchera, PUD. It's really specific to one, area of the PUD, the former equestrian center, which is located on the west, kind of southwest portion, of the ranch. So this is a master plan amendment from Parks, Greenways and Open Space to single family. And then a PUD amendment from equestrian center, which was the actual kind of zoning designation we had in the PUD to single family, and we would designate it as Village 8. So it's kind of the next sequential village. Next slide, please. Looking at, so this is a master plan amendment. So the city's master plan currently for this is Parks, Greenways and Open Space, BGOS. It's our contention this was done in error. So back in 2018, the city adopted a new master plan. Prior to that, all of Ranchera had a master plan designation of SPA or specific planning area. That was what was used, kind of used to be the norm. You would have a PUD, had an underlying master plan designation of SPA. SPA was essentially a broad brush that allowed you to have specific zoning that was dictated by the PUD itself. The city went away from that in 2018 and designated areas what they felt was appropriate. So the equestrian center was not a public amenity. It was a commercial stable, so it was a commercial operation. It was not necessarily an open space amenity for the community. It was offered, at least, back in 2014 when we did this plan. The thought process was that, folks that were in the neighborhood might have horses. They want to board their horses there. The developer made considerable investments into actually Bartley Ranch directly to the west to move a number of riding arenas and the underlayment in those arenas to move those over there as a public amenity, but also with an access across the lake ditch to allow for, folks that were boarding their horses in the equestrian center, they could go across and ride in the Bartley Ranch area. Kind of fast forward, that didn't kind of come to fruition. They didn't have, to my knowledge, they didn't have any residents that had horses actually in there. So it was not like, it didn't pan out the way they anticipated. So I think a couple of years ago, they stopped operations of it. Last year, they tore down the equestrian center, which was built in the late 90s, I believe, by John Hara. So it wasn't like an old structure that was on the property. It was a cutting horse arena where John had, he had his horses and he would have cutting events there. So it's a vacant property now. If we could, next slide, please. So what we're asking for is for that specific parcel itself, that it would be remaster plan to single family. And if you look to the north, all of the area, most of the area in Ranchera is currently master plan single family. We would leave the Parks, Greenways and Open Space. So this area here on the south side is the Evans Creek Open Space Corridor. The area on the west side is the Lake Ditch Trail Corridor. So those would remain as Parks, Greenways and Open Space. And then really there's just a sliver that essentially is a portion of Falville Way. So it didn't make sense to really need to change that. Next slide. Zoning is PUD back. So this is kind of where there's layers to the city's master plan and zoning map. So the zoning of it from the city is PUD. And then the next slide, there's another layer to that, which has specific zoning for the property that's dictated in the PUD. Next slide. So looking back kind of in time, back in 2014, this was the third amendment to the plan. That equestrian center, again, right down in the left, bottom left there of the screen, was actually bigger than what it is now. So it was about 17 acres. It included 9 acres on or 10, almost 10 acres on the south side of Evans Creek. Next slide. That was actually developed under the equestrian center zoning and later changed to estates residential in the fourth amendment. There's 9 lots down there on that. This what's called out as estates residential, 9.8 acres. And the equestrian center remained because it was still active as a commercial stable. Next slide. And so now what's being proposed, I apologize, I noticed this afternoon, I got the wrong land use plan in here. So up top where it says office medical, that's an alternative plan that's included and that's actually not been enacted. So it still is in the PUD. I don't want to confuse things, but the major portion of this change is that Village 8 looking to change that former equestrian center to single family, again, looking at the kind of western boundary of Ranchera, all of, villages 1, 2, 3, 5. The estates residential and now village 8 would be proposed as single family. Next slide. This is the corrected land use plan, sorry, looking at the open space, so that village 7 at the top there, it's all urban residential. In village 8, this looks at the open space corridors that are within, so you got Evans Creek on the south, like I mentioned. Lake Ditch corridor on the west side there. And then there was always an open space corridor that was on the north side of village 8. Now that we're coming forward with this, we've had a few meetings with the neighbors that are directly adjacent to this in village 3. And working with them on different ways to help mitigate the impacts of what would be, additional residential development. And so what we included in the handbook now is a 50-foot open space corridor. It's not identified as that on this, so we'll be amending that, but including a 50-foot open space corridor with a trail and landscaping standards in there that would be similar to what the Lake Ditch Trail has. So you have that kind of open space corridor on both the north and south sides of this proposed village. And with that, this is a master plan amendment, and so by state statute, we are required to also have a neighborhood meeting. Postcards for that went out last week. Should start hitting mailboxes for people that are within our noticing boundary. It will be February 27th, 5:30 p.m. at the club at Ranchera. Planning Commission was originally scheduled for March 5th. As I said, we're kind of still working with some of those adjacent neighbors. Had some comments from staff and kind of trying to coalesce those into some additional amendments and standards that we would be included. So we've asked for some extra time from staff, likely going probably April 2nd is the estimated planning commission date right now, but that's a little bit to be determined. My contact information there, Leah Picotti, is the staff member, her email there, and then the link at the top takes you to all of the application materials that were submitted. So with that, I will.
Okay, don't go away. Documents for the record. Okay, what are you doing here? Village 8, that's a law. What in single family, what level of single family are you proposing?
So we actually included in there, the single family zoning designation in Ranchera. Most of it, if you go back a couple slides, if you can go back a slide. Look at the picture. So for example, village 3 and village 2, it's a little confusing, but that top there is 2 villages. They all have a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. Village 1, which technically is just the kind of western portion of this up against the Lewis Lakeside subdivision, had a minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet. So we mimicked that. So this village 8 would have a minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet. Really, that just kind of establishes, the estimated number of units that could be developed there. So when you do the math, it comes out to about 29 units. So essentially, the estates residential is the lowest residential density at 1 acre or 1 unit per acre. This village 8 and village 1, again, against that Lewis Lakeside would be the next lowest, and then villages 3 and 5 are higher than that.
The jungle out there. All right, so I can't, because the opaqueness of your drawing blocks out roads, so I can't see what's between village 8 and village 4. What have you got going for access?
Yep, so Falabella Way is constructed here. Our line work kind of doesn't show up very well, but Falabella Way continues all the way down and goes into this cul-de-sac in the estates residential down there. So that road's already constructed.
It already comes through all the way out.
It doesn't go out. This is an emergency access. The PUD has restrictions for no public access, no public vehicle access to Del Monte, only pedestrian and
Is it helpful in a fire? Can people get out?
it's emergency access. It's gated emergency access.
But it's gated, so you can't even get to it.
I'm sorry, there will be a moment for public comment. That way we can finish this presentation.
Okay, so what you want to do is do 29 units, so we think at this moment. Sizes, heights, how are they relative to the rest?
It would have the same standards as the adjacent. So essentially all of it has kind of a similar setback, similar heights. If you look at it, that it's all yellow to kind of simplify it. it would all have the same.
So
zoning
this is how many versions of the altered PUD, which kind of,
This is the fifth amendment.
yeah, so.
Yeah, so, but each time we have to come back, we have to go through this process. The PUD amendments aren't, don't happen.
They're not nothing. People usually get bought into a PUD because they
Understood.
feel
And,
like.
and
they
there,
are
and there's a process
knowledge
to
of what's
change it,
happened. Yeah,
that has to go to the planning commission, and the city council.
So
Because
you have ADUs behind these? 29 units? So you're really getting twice that many housing units in there?
no, I don't think ADUs are permitted. Branch, right?
All right, that's all I have for questions. Does anyone have other questions? Okay, just you.
Audrey Keller for the record, Jeff, and this map. So first of all, I object to the rezoning, the PUD as it exists. Clearly says if they demolish the equestrian center, it is zone 1 home per acre, not 29. And so this is what they propose. This is a first draft from 2023 that was shared with me. This is not 1 home per acre. So first of all, I think the city council was very wise. They wrote in the original PUD that if the equestrian center was destroyed, deemed unusable, which the homeowners don't buy, but that's what it is. It was 1 per acre, and I'm going to ask that the planning commission and city council sticks with that zoning plan. It was an excellent plan because the adjacent community of homes, those are acre lots, the equestrian center lots. Those are also 1 acre.
They're not 1 acre in size or 1 acre density. There's 1 unit per acre. So it's a little different. The ones that are adjacent to
The estates.
the estates, yeah, the ones that are adjacent to Evans Creek, so it would be across
Okay.
Evans Creek or, 30.
So this density is, how many units per acre? Which
So
one-
this is-
That's only 24 homes.
Yeah, this is about 4 units per acre.
Okay, so I object to this plan entirely. I think it should stick with the existing PUD. As a resident, I object. Secondly, Evans Creek is a flood zone. We had to address it as part of our home insurance. It's a flood zone, and you're calling that open space. Also, I'm concerned, and this would be for Councilmember Dewar, is the property that is along the border of Bartley Ranch Park and that it's outside of our gates, but they've labeled this map open space,
Yes. So
But
that's
this is
the lake
a-
ditch.
a ditch. It's not open space. The equestrian center had 20% open space zoned. So how are they gonna go with that and replicate the zoning? They're basically gonna unzone the open space, and we're not gonna gain any open space.
Right, I think the request is basically to rezone what
Yes.
was PGOS, Parks,
Yes.
Greenway, and Open Space with an equestrian overlay, is that what you
No,
call it?
no, it was always an equestrian center, which was a commercial operation. The city, when they came in and did their Reimagine Reno master plan, assigned it a Parks Greenway as an open space master plan designation, even though the underlying zoning allowed for commercial operation. So that's where we feel like that was done in error.
Well,
And to answer your question, Evans Creek is an open space corridor. Yes, it's a creek corridor. That's common that we would have that as an open space. The Lake Ditch corridor along the western boundary, it is within Ranchera property. The ditch, the property line kind of goes down the middle of the ditch. And then on the Ranchera side of the ditch is a public pathway. So it is within it's within Ranchera. But I think it was your idea to make it a public pathway.
Yes.
As part of that. So that is all, publicly accessible from the west, and then obviously it's gated from the Ranchera side.
right, so it's gated, but it's open space, even though it's on the opposite side of the gate of our community. So I just want to say, I feel like we should stick with the existing plan, 1 dwelling unit per acre, not deviate. And B, I would like to know where additional open space could be gained in our community and not lost to density. Thank you.
New member here.
Mike Ginsburg for the record, so go back, we could go back to the master plan that you do.
Do you want the presentation?
That's perfect. right?
Okay, let me, 1 second, sorry, I gotta switch screens here.
So when this was created originally, it was always gonna be an equestrian center. The way this was developed, I'm gonna ask you on the utility side, everything was sized for this. It was never sized for the extra 29 units. So you know what you're going to have to upsize.
Sure.
In other words, you're gonna have to increase the sewer, the storm drains, the gas, the electric, the water.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to go back off-site and possibly upgrade other stuff. Have you looked into that?
Absolutely.
And your two accesses are Talbot and Sierra Rose for this entire subdivision.
No.
Talbot and Kitsy.
Yeah, the Sierra Rose.
No,
connects.
no, it does not. It's not connected.
No, that's approved, so.
Yeah, so as far as your comment about infrastructure, one thing I didn't mention in my presentation, so one thing that's not changing with this is the total maximum number of units that could be developed. So Ranchera, as approved today, you could build 722 homes there. We're not even close to that. We're closer to about 400 homes. And so from an infrastructure standpoint, everything's essentially oversized.
Made this. That's my question. Okay.
Are there any other questions from the NAB members?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, sorry, from the NAB, and then we move on to you. Thank you.
Now that the NAP's done, I just have a quick question, Andy, too. You mentioned the path that I did, request and you guys put into your PUD.
Yep.
Does the path where it intersects now with Del Monte, is that open so that it actually is a public access path?
It's supposed to be, I believe so. I haven't checked it.
No. So I have seen it padlocked.
Okay, I can pass
And
that along.
so that's an outstanding issue for the regular PUD before
Sure.
you begin an amendment.
Okay.
And last time we had an amendment, I brought up an issue that the bridges that I also proposed and they also accepted over to Wheatland Park and over to Bartley. At that time, they didn't have handrails and so and so. So it seems like this is the right time to bring it up because, and I brought up the trail at that time too. So they fixed the bridge, but they did not fix the
Okay.
path.
I'll pass that along.
So, yeah, so number two, it is public access and to get into Ranchera, is it a code now? I heard it was a key fob before.
Now.
What is it?
Phone app.
I'm
It's a
sorry,
phone app.
a phone app, okay.
The 25th, on the 25th.
Oh, to be developed in or approved in, go into action in 20.
Implemented, yeah.
My question is on Village 8. So as I recall, when we did the PUD, it said that should you tear down the equestrian center and want to build houses on that site, that it was zoned, basically for 7 homes. It was 7 acres.
Yep. That's what's
One
in the
house
PUD,
per
yeah, yeah, so Audrey's correct. What's in the PUD right now is we could build 7 lots
Today.
on Village 8 or on the equestrian center land today. So what we're asking for is a change to that.
Okay, and then just I have this Ranchera site plan 8, and I only counted 24, but you were saying 29, so I'm a little.
Yeah, so just the way that we tried to use standards that were already in the PUD. We can further limit that, and that's kind of what we've been talking with the adjacent neighbors about. So when you did the math, we basically said, okay, it's gonna be single family designation, which is all of this stuff to the north of it. And the largest lot size in that is 9,000 square feet. So we use that standard. It's already in the handbook. The math for
So
that
is
is
that what
29
this
units.
is, 9,000 square feet?
Density, yeah,
No.
the density of it. That's actually less than that. That's 24 units, but yes.
Right, but I'm just saying it's 7 acres.
Yep.
So what are
It's
you?
about 4 units per acre.
4 units per acre, okay. And then one last thing, it's been brought up several times, even tonight. That the villages need to now be squared up. If you're amending the PUD, you actually have to put the correct number of units per village. Not a theoretical, but the actual, they've been built.
Yep.
And the staff told me that too, that they were gonna have you do that. I just wanted to confirm, is
Yep.
that part of your
That's,
process?
yeah, so that was one of the comments that staff had, and so we're evaluating that. Yeah, and that, because they're right? I mean, there's aside from Village 8, there's also 8 units that are currently approved in the event center. That tentative map's already approved. Outside of that, there's not a lot of
You're built
areas.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it really needs to come into conformance so that they can move forward and properly allocate this HOA.
So apples and oranges,
Okay.
what's in the PUD does not necessarily dictate what's in the CCNR. So the CCNR is a totally separate document. That's a private covenant between the landowners and the developer. That has different things in it that are totally not related to the total number of
Well,
units in the PUD.
in that covenant, does it speak about when I mean, they're already over 75%, so based
And
on
it's-
what you built out.
Based on what's in the PUD, you're kind of, what's in the PUD is different than what's in the CCNR.
Right,
So
but I'm
the
asking,
the CCNRs I know are different. They have a different lot total. They have standards in there, so.
yeah,
That's.
but that
it's a
probably
different-
needs to be amended, it's a fantasy, because you only have 400, you just said, not 700 something.
Yes, and
So-
I mean, and the master developer doesn't wanna maintain the HOA forever, right? They will eventually turn it over. It's just, finding the appropriate time to do so.
Well, okay, it seems like an outstanding issue that I've heard a lot about. And so it might be a good faith thing to square up the CCNRs with the PUD. I mean, they can't be that different and still be legal. I mean,
It's just, they're different, right?
understand
Yeah,
what you're
and the CCNRs are not of the purview of the city, so they're totally different documents. So. But also something we obviously, are aware of and looking into. for.
creating a lot of tension.
Sure.
Anyway, I think I'm done.
Anybody else
There's
have
public.
any comments or?
I guess I have a question, Dave Titzel for the record. Why is there the hesitation to clean up the difference between the CCRs and why not just do it now?
It's just, they're totally different documents, so we
I
wouldn't
understand that.
necessarily be amending the CCNRs. It would be looking at how. When it's appropriate to turn over the HOA. To the residents, which is dictated by the CCNR, it has nothing really to do.
I think all he's saying is what I said, which is it's a good faith effort and it could be
Definitely
conveyed
something-
back to the owners.
Absolutely.
It makes you think, it looks like you're hiding something.
Yeah, is that right?
No,
Or manipulating something. Got it.
I've just heard for the last 2 years, a lot of unrest as this has virtually been built out, but they still don't have control over their destiny as an HOA, which I've dealt with all of these organizations in South Reno. Some have HOAs, many don't, but they do get to dictate their future at some point, not 20 years,
No,
but
Yeah.
Is there anybody that can put a condition on that,
I mean, it's something for us to check into, I guess. But it doesn't, you're not forbidden from bringing it up.
no, we understand it's a comment, it's a concern from the community. What I'm trying to kind of is like bifurcate. That's an
I
issue
understand
that's,
you want to bifurcate it.
well, no, but it's an issue the city can't deal with, right? This process that we're doing with the master plan and PUD amendment can't address what's in the CCNRs.
Excuse me, could I speak to that, Madam? Yes. Audrey Keller for the record. Actually, the record counts of homes planned for the PUD are included in the PUD, as are the counts for the cottages, the counts for the villages. And those counts are not valid anymore because, they shifted from the original plan of the PUD. For example, Village 7, I think you had 220 apartments or something in there, and now the fixed number that's been approved is 59. So that is a part of the PUD. It is called out like in the index there. So it has to, the correction has to start somewhere. And the correct place for it to start is in the PUD, in your documents. It should be updated.
Yeah, I think he said that the staff brought it up and that they recognize they have to square this up.
I agree, but the staff also told me when I asked that they put it back to Andy and company and put it back. So what we're getting is, no, we're not doing it. No, we're not doing it. Somebody needs to be responsible to do it.
I'm saying we're evaluating changing the PUD to the numbers match up, but that has nothing to do with the CCNRs.
Well, it actually.
But evaluated, what's that? What's evaluating?
We're just making sure that doesn't have any other ramifications. So I don't think it does, but we're just looking at it to make sure that we're doing things appropriately.
Okay, any other questions or comments from anybody? Well, all right,
Back there.
oh, okay,
First of all.
You
I
need to
wanna
come up,
say-
ma'am.
Come
You
up
need
and
to come
say
up,
your name.
say your name.
I can't walk very much, no.
The reason is there's a microphone here,
That's
so the
okay.
people online.
First of all, I guess I want to know.
Ma'am,
Please
before you
state your
start,
name.
could you can sit.
Okay.
If you could introduce yourself and just.
My name's Pat Brown and I live in the custom home sites at Ranchero. I've been there, the house has been completed for 5 years. We've been hearing the same thing for 5 years. Every so often, I've been at several of these meetings, they keep changing everything that we bought into. I live on the custom home sites where they want to build these 24 or 29 homes. I live on Falabella. Those are all custom lots.
In Village
Above-
4,
Village 5.
Village 5.
Village 5. And across the street are custom homes, and then across from that. Those lots are all bigger lots. We pay more money for them. We can't reach out and touch our neighbors quite like they can in the Toll Brothers areas. And, you know, I am opposed to that dense housing being built right by the custom home sites that we paid more money for, thinking also that the equestrian center was supposed to stay there. So I'm a little annoyed about that. And second of all, when he says they've talked to neighbors, how many neighbors have you talked to? How many? My understanding is 2.
Yeah.
2 neighbors that live on that whole street and that whole custom area. 2 out of how many homes are in those custom areas? That's not very many. And that's all I have to say.
I would encourage you, it sounds like there's a neighborhood meeting on February 27th. Is that 5:30, Andy?
Correct.
And,
February 27th, Thursday, February 27th. Is that what you said?
at the,
At the club.
at the club or at the,
The club. Rancho.
club?
Yeah. You know where it is, Audrey?
Yes, it's at the club, which, I'm not
I'm
sure.
not sure which room.
Yeah,
but,
if there's 400 members times 2, that's 800, we won't fit in the club. So, just saying. So, hopefully, okay, Lana?
Roland Chalmers for the record. Audrey, is this something that you provided?
That's the first lady that spoke, Amy,
Okay.
she provided that. But it really does speak to, this is some of the numbers that should be corrected and updated so that we can actually control our board of directors and our finances.
So currently, has the 25% been met?
Oh, the threshold, yes, we have two developer members and 1 sort of declarant member,
Okay, thank you, that's all I wanted.
homeowner /
All right. We're closing the item on Ranchero. Moving on to item D, board commission committee report.
Online, there are more people who want to speak on that.
Oh, I'm sorry, nobody was raising their hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were turning it off, but I'd like to speak.
We have Terry.
You don't want to try that last name, right?
Terry, hi, thank you.
And you can move that down, Terry, so that you're out of the spotlight.
Well, I'm gonna sit, so I think I'll be out of it.
I don't think so.
No, you're right, come on.
Go. There you go.
Okay. I'm Carrie Yaconis. I live at 6135 Falabella. I am in, that's not up there anymore, but I'm in the Lariat group, which was 3. Lot 3.
Village 3, maybe?
Village 3, sorry. We're lot 19. We were one of the 40 people who purchased a custom lot on that first Saturday they were offered and sold out in 2 hours. We made several trips to discuss the plans, the vision for Ranchero, and we liked the plans and the amount of open and green space, the balance of custom versus semi-custom versus condo flats, the plans for the pool, converting the mansion into a club. I knew Chip Volby and really liked the whole vision as he explained it to me. He's probably rolling over in his grave right now as he knows right now how things have changed.
We wanted the planned pool with, for my husband to swim, and I was gonna ride at the equestrian center, and I'd already contacted a breeder to talk about purchasing a horse that I could keep at the equestrian center and walk to. Well, that went out the window. But we thought, okay, with 7 acres and it's zoned for 1 acre lots, so we know there was only gonna be another 7 custom homes there. We thought that blended nice. It actually would improve the balance in the community, which become too dense in our views. And there's so many traffic problems now, and I won't go over that, but we need a new traffic study and not one that was done before anything was built there. We keep coming in and talking about the same things. They want to modify the PUD. It seems like the PUD means nothing. There's nobody to make people adhere to what's in the PUD and protect the people that have already invested in it. I thoroughly believe that we'll be back here again another time, talking about modifying the PUD again to add like the grass that's in front of the clubhouse to build something there, or drain the pond and pave it over with concrete and build something there. There goes more green or open space. And the provisions of the PUD seem to mean nothing to us who are residents. And I believe that this increase that they've proposed provides nothing for of value for the current residents, and it only offers detriments. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we had public comment via Zoom as well. If you could please raise your hand.
You still have somebody in the room back here? No. Oh, somebody.
I have behind you, Jennifer.
One second. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, we have one person on Zoom.
Okay. Oh, no, go ahead. Let her.
Hi, Amy. Go ahead.
Hi, Amy Horvath. I apologize that I was a little bit rushed in my comments before, and I thank you for the additional opportunity to explain my views. You know, what's in front of the NAB right now and eventually to planning and city is whether or not that equestrian center land should be rezoned. And I do not believe it should. The land should stay PGOS, and the developer should be required to create a park, recreational open space for the neighborhood on this parcel. Something that Andy did not show you is the plan that was submitted on January 13th to the city. But on page 3, it says that the community will continue to be served by the private facilities at the Ranchera Clubhouse. This, however, is not a guarantee. The future of the Ranchera Clubhouse is completely unknown. In fact, the developer plans to sell it off in the next couple of years. And the PUD allows for a variety of land uses. So it doesn't have to stay a club. It could become an inn. It could become more houses. There's no protection. It is not a protected recreational facility, and therefore that should not be one of their reasons to change the zoning. Plus, on page 2 of that same plan that he submitted to the city, it says that the land use change fulfills the objectives outlined in the PUD handbook by providing a cohesive mix of land uses. Creating yet another village of homes is not providing a mix of land uses. The Ranchera neighborhood is full of single-family villages already. We have 6. However, there are no areas in the neighborhood that are PGOS. In case you're wondering, the Ranchera project comprises over 141 acres and has less than 3 acres that are even considered common area for the residents. Half of what Andy has on that picture of colored in green, they're pathways. It's a sidewalk. 3 acres, less than 3 acres of 141 acres total, it's less than 2% of the neighborhood. Keeping the equestrian center as PGOS will provide the neighborhood with an additional 12% of much needed protected open space. However, if the city chooses to rezone the equestrian center as single family, I ask the city to put in 4 conditions. 1 is protect the Ranchera Clubhouse as an asset and recreational facility for the residents in the PUD amendment, since the developer already is stating that the neighborhood will continue to be served by this clubhouse. Please put it in writing that it will be. 2, require that the developer provide $5 million to the betterment updating of Wheatland Park. I have this ask because the developer claims 4 different times in their plan submitted to the city that Wheatland Park is sufficient PGOS for our neighborhood. If the city is going to agree that Wheatland Park is adequate PGOS, then it's time for this park to be updated. If you haven't been over there, take a walk around. It's not safe, it's not inviting, and it's old. If the city allows the developer to remove the PGOS from our neighborhood and rezone it as single family, the developer financially benefits from this change. If the developer gets to financially benefit, then they should be required to better Wheatland Park for the residents of Ranchera, the surrounding neighborhoods, and the city as a whole. My third ask is that we maintain the density of 1 dwelling unit per acre. That's what the PUD has said. This PUD has been amended 5 different times. Everything that we've been sold at as residents, everything has changed. Please do not allow 29 more homes.
Thank you, Amy. Your time's up. I apologize.
Could we give her 1 more minute?
Sure.
Her fourth.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My fourth is going to be about Andy's comments about the CCNRs and the PUD. The PUD has to be updated to reflect the actual realized total units. Again, Andy said the PUD called for 722 units. They're not going to be built. If you allow 7 units, it's 1 acre dwellings, then we will be at 401 units. If you allow 29, we're at 423. Andy brought up that the CCNRs and the PUD aren't connected, but they are. Our CCNRs are based on the PUD thresholds, the 25%, the 50%, and the 75%, which you saw in my initial slide that was presented. So it is important that the PUD matches the actual build numbers. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
One more?
Yeah.
The lineup corrected.
Who's talking?
It's a city park. Yeah.
Linda Cross again, and I live in the Lewis homes, right, oops, yeah, let me get out of the way. Get out of the light, because it's killing my eyes.
Yeah.
I live in the Lewis homes on the other side of the horrible gully that was created by Ranchera. I wish I had known this was coming up, because I would have brought a photo from the backyard of a friend of mine's house, which is now high, his back porch is higher than this ceiling on the back side of his single-story house because of the way they built that. Not only that, they tore down all those beautiful tall trees like used to be everywhere. And they promised not to do it, but while we were waiting, just like over at Lake Ridge, while we were waiting for our arbitration development, they went in and demolished everything there. They went in there and they took all those trees. That park was really the park for the Lewis homes. And that was one of the reasons it was built around there, was so that we had a park. And then in comes Harris and Ranchera, and Bill Harrah probably is turning over in his grave. And they come in and then they build a little bridge and they say, oh, that's our open space. Well, I agree with her. She took my thunder. That was what I stood up to say. I think they ought to make that whole thing a park and give the people that live there a place to go and something that is their own. There is nothing in Wheatland Park except a little walk around and stuff. There's not hardly anything. And so I think, maybe you might let them build 3 properties or something, but I don't think it should be built any worse than what it already is. If you would look at all those buildings and the driveways, I'm telling you, you have to have a Mini Cooper to park in those driveways. And the view that the people got stuck with that were on the Torrington side. Andy, you and I butted heads before when you did this debacle over here with that net. Well, we won't talk about that, but anyhow, it's already ruined. But you never, ever tell the truth.
Come on, Linda, let's not be personal here.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying, he always brings up subjects and then says this is what it's gonna be. And then he turns around and changes it, and that's not what it turns out to be. And so, but anyhow, I'm just talking on behalf of the people in the Lewis homes too, because we are gonna be stuck with all that traffic. And I fight my way all the time when I have to go down Sierra Road. So I think that the people there are correct, and I'm not gonna take any more time. Oh, it's already up anyhow.
Let me just clarify, back when, this was like 2015 timeframe, when I asked and they agreed to put in a bridge across the lake ditch. The goal was for the residents that live in Ranchera, if they had children, to be able to allow the children to access Huff Acre Elementary School without having to drive on Talbot, McCarran, and then Lakeside, probably twice a day, you know, up and back and up and back. It was to reduce trips. The reason that we put in that we asked them to put in the walking path was that we need connected bikeways. And this would prevent people from having to go out on McCarran, Kidski, the roundabout, very dangerous. So by providing an alternate way through, it was to open up biking. That's why I was asking Andy earlier if it was in fact open, because we're now at almost 10 years, let's call it 8. And the plan was it to be open at the beginning, not at the end. So it was built, but you know, having a chain across doesn't make it accessible. So I just wanted to be clear, it wasn't really about park space, it was really about access to schools. And we have a requirement in Reno called Safe Routes to Schools. We wanted to be able to make it so you could walk to your elementary school that you were scheduled to go to without having to cross a major road or have to add more traffic to already busy area. So just to add some clarity. I note that we're at 10:09. I don't know if there's any final comments, Madam Chair.
I've almost given up. I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. The name is Christine Speed and I live in Ranchera. And I notice in our PUD that we've dedicated 13 acres to open space. But there's never been in the PUD any kind of description where this open space specifically is. And as a prerequisite for any change to the equestrian center, I would love the city to request to the developer to plot out exactly where these 13 acres are. Because what happens is there's like a little bait and switch all the time. And it's always kind of at the expense of open space. And in the, before times when we had the equestrian center, I thought that was 7 acres. First it was bigger, as you know, then that was kind of eaten off to the estates. Then it became smaller to 7 acres. And I thought, okay, that is labeled PGOS. So I thought, okay, that's kind of open space. But now I hear it's not really open space and they can build on it. Well, where is the open space then? Where are the 13 acres? And nothing should be built there until we figure out where the other, if something is going to be built there, we should figure out where the 13 acres are before we give away 7 of what I thought was open space. That's my request. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And Andy, is the common area and the open space, are those the same? Or is the open space something different than common area that is usually along a road or something?
Yeah, we can break the presentation back up to that last slide. It depends on which area we're talking about. There are more common areas that are not necessarily designated as open space,
There's common areas.
There's
that
a,
are just
large
need to
landscape
be
island
maintained.
on Ranchera Parkway that has a big, tree in it. That's common area, but it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like it's.
I do, but is it called open space, which generally connotes that
Yeah.
it's
So this is the open space plan. We didn't make a lot of modifications to the open space as part of this when we just designated Village 8 as single family. So essentially, there's a 55-foot corridor For Evans Creek, we talked a lot about the 35-foot corridor along the boundary for the lake ditch. There's a minimum 20-foot corridor along, Ranchero Parkway for, essentially it's, kind of a landscape parkway. With the multi-use path, and then the same along, the north side of the event center there. The, pond was identified as open space. And then the open space buffer along the south side next to Del Monte, which is 45-foot buffer. That was the mound with the existing trees was preserved as kind of a buffer to the residential to the south on Del Monte. So anything that's kind of in that dark green color is the open space that we were referencing in the calculations. Now, what I also meant is, in my presentation, this open space along the north side of Village A is going to increase significantly. It was only just kind of a trail and some landscaping. It's being expanded to 50 feet with additional landscaping in there. So we are trying to look at options.
Any questions? I just have one question. So, okay, open space on Ranchero
Sorry, can you give your name
Parkway.
for the record?
Audrey Keller, for the record, last time. The Ranchero Parkway, can you point to it so everybody knows? So I walk that. That is called asphalt and concrete and a fence. That's the definition of open space?
Trail corridor with landscaping, yes.
Oh, that's a trail corridor.
Is it a separate?
It's a
trail
multi-use
or is it
path.
the road?
No, it's detached from the road. It's a pathway that's alongside the road that has, that meanders and has landscaping and trees and things like that.
Concrete, yes.
Well, trails are open space. Trails are recreational amenities.
The ditch as well.
Yeah, the ditch has, there's a trail along that, a multi-use path along that with landscaping as well.
So you can't play in the ditch.
No.
No,
And there's.
no, so let's not, open space can be a lot of different things, right? It can be Evans Creek where it's a creek corridor that's preserved as a creek. It can be a trail corridor where there, it's a walking path. That's oftentimes open space in residential developments. It doesn't have to be a park, right? There's Giant Park next door. To the west, there's Wheatland Park and Bartley Ranch Regional Park. Adding additional park here seemed a little redundant. So we opted for more walking paths to make those connections to our
But
existing.
Amy, let me just ask one thing. I know that the clubhouse is like a membership thing. I know that, so it's not accessible to all the people that live here unless they're members, right?
All the residents are.
They're automatically members and they
Yeah.
pay a membership fee or
Yep.
something?
Yeah,
Okay.
part of their HOA.
Okay, and are there rooms in there where they could meet, or is there an outdoor pavilion? Like somewhere where they could gather or?
Yeah, so in the events that are the club now, what is referenced, yes, there's a outdoor area, there's bocce ball courts, there's a swimming pool. There's indoor card rooms and gym and spa.
And they did say though that has a separate ownership and apparently could be sold or is being discussed to be sold.
I don't know about that.
Yes.
That I don't know.
Can I testify for that? Audrey Keller, for the record, it's in our newsletter, it's printed, and there's a committee formed to sell the clubhouse.
Oh.
Which means the clubhouse, the lawn, the bocce course, the pool, and it could be sold to one person that wants to live in the house, because it's a house. Or it could be sold to a number of other things listed in the PUD. Other.
So if it's for sale, I'm not sure we can include it in any way as part of the open space or access.
It's not necessarily, it's like, for the PUD, the green stuff is open space, quote
Right.
unquote, right? The event center is a commercial club. It's a clubhouse without a golf course.
And is the
essentially.
PGOS actually cover this lake, you said?
I don't know that. Oh, no,
Well, you have it covered green, so.
That's in the PUD, we called it out as open space specific.
But it's not zoned, PGOS.
Master plan, that's different terminologies there, master plan. I don't know. You have to go back slides.
Well, let's go back a couple slides. The reason I ask is that, is there a rim around the lake or is it just the water itself? Are people allowed to boat on it? I mean, what is it?
No.
You tell me where.
Yeah, I cut it off, it's not.
Okay.
This is zoomed in so far, sorry.
All right, well, perhaps as you're going through the review, you could refine that.
Yeah, and some of these open space areas too, this has been, this is a large landscape preserve that's along there, it's not identified as open space, but essentially it's open space. There's the old swimming pool, old swimming hole, it's a pond. That's not all identified as open space there, but it is common area open space. So it's, you know, we identified it on the plan and then the area is kind of morphed, as this, as it evolved.
Right. We have one public comment on Zoom, if I could just. Werner,
Hello.
I believe you have public comment.
Yes, I do. Thank you. My name is Werner Keller. I'm a resident of Ranchero. And I have a very narrow request, but it's an urgent one. We have a traffic study in our documents. It's part of the PUD dated April 16, 2018. And it was badly done at the time it was done. If you read it in detail, and I'm retired, I took the time to do that. There's all kinds of crazy stuff in there. For instance, it didn't have a model for what to do about the traffic coming out of into and out of the club. And so it said, well, let's assume the club is a church and let's assign that traffic pattern to the club. Well, that's a standard of excellence that we have in the existing traffic study. Now we have all kinds of irregularities with the security gates. The Talbot gate is often down. And when we had a fire, the management that should be our HOA management, but it's unfortunately, it's the same people running the club. They told us, well, we're going to lock the Talbot gate. Can you imagine that? Community our size has one exit in case of fire. That was the Kitsky gate. So the judgment of this people running at the HOA, of course, is terrible. But my narrow request, please, that I'm going to repeat this at the city council. I'm going to motor on down to the planning commission. That traffic study, they cannot ignore it. Because even today, there are times when the traffic is backed up all the way to the guard shack, going out to the Kitsky entrance. This community is way underserved. And in case of emergency, there's going to be a big mess. And of course, we remember that on Village 7, they declined. The developer put up a stiff resistance to putting out that emergency exit onto Sierra Rose. Thank you very much.
Right. Now I think we have to be done no matter what. We're burned out of time. So we can move to item D, board commission committee member reports and announcements. Have there any of those? No, hearing none. We'll move on to any board members have any future agenda items to discuss if they'd like to see on the agenda. No. Okay, and no additional public comment at the end of the meeting. Okay, do I give a motion to the end?
No, I'll move that we adjourn.
There's a second?
Audrey Keller, I second.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Thank you.
Bye.